partners for the year, for the last year or so. We have scientific organizations, local organizations, historical societies, universities, including University of Maryland, Georgetown University. Our big connections, obviously where we are very lucky to be in proximity to a lot of government and government affiliated institutional partners like the National Gallery of Art, the Smithsonian. Our board treasurer happens to be the director of digital programs for the Smithsonian. So that helps us a lot with connections. I will say we have a little bit of an advantage there. But many of these partnerships were developed over time. Some of them, and I know that this came up in a question in a panel yesterday about how do you make these connections. I cold call a lot of people at my start with the chapter and built those connections and used them to find other connections within those networks. So it's all networking, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we get those together in Experience and Change. So what we consider to be a partner is someone who believes in a mutually beneficial relationship between us and them. This could mean helping to improve and generate content that's of interest to us. That, of course, would be improving things on the project. We do a lot of work within Wikipedia, but we do Wikidata, WikiCommons work. But those are the big three that we work on to train our partners on how to add their resources to the projects. Obviously, we hope that they utilize and share resources and other assets, that they can make them available. So not only can we invite the public to get the sources that these institutions have available into the encyclopedia and use them to generate new content, but we can also utilize their own assets. When I mean that, I also mean their people. Many of the people that we work with at these partners' sites are librarians, archivists, folks who work in public programming and whose mission is also to get those materials out there and available. These partnerships often take the form of events. They could also be ongoing and public and private initiatives. So our events, when I say events, I mean editing workshops, editathons. All of our editathons start with 60-minute trainings. Occasionally we have also workshops that are just trainings that don't end with a lot of edits, but those are pretty rare. And I want to take a moment to talk about the longer term initiatives, because editathons, you know, you can go to them, you can get people that come, they edit once or twice and that they leave. We do try to push longer term initiatives and find the partners who want to dig in and do the work. For us, those partners have been the University of Maryland, the Smithsonian, the National Gallery of Art. We almost revived our National Archives partnerships this year, but my contact was moved to another department, which again is one of those things that is happening recently. So that's a little bit on the back burner, but we'll keep pushing. We also have a long-standing outside of our region partnership with the University of South Florida and Tennessee State University. So just know that it's not just events, that it could be long-term partnerships, and these are some of the events that we've done recently. We hosted a glam camp with the National Gallery of Art. They provided their space, their people, their resources to have glam professionals who are Wikipedians to come in and learn in our space. We do a lot of events with Georgetown University, they're a longtime partner, and as well as National Museum of Women in the Arts. These are a little background before we go into the actual meat of this presentation. So this is a select number of programs we've done over the last few years. Not everything we do is stored in the dashboard for various reasons, but you just take a look there. These are a couple of the last events we've done. Pretty happy with these stats. And I will stop to say about 80% of people who come to our events, public events, have never edited before. And we're able to get numbers like this doing so. My big thing is, because I've worked as an education director at a museum before, I teach the way I would want to learn, and I came into this not knowing how to edit. I make everything very accessible. I don't want to say I talk to people like they're children, but I make it very accessible, and I use the skills that I learned as an education director to make it as easy to follow as possible. And just some of the, talk about our relationships. So this is one of the articles that was created at one of our recent Smithsonian events. It's Miki Hayakawa. She was a Japanese-American painter. This was created from scratch at one of our events using materials provided by the Smithsonian. Specifically, the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum. They do not have a physical museum right now, so this is something to consider to maybe, when trying to create your own partnerships, to find organizations or sites that don't necessarily have a physical space but still have stuff to share. So they are very keen to continue working with us, and hopefully through the time when they have their building, hopefully in the next 10 years or so, but it's not that long. So we used their materials to create this article, and then Ada McMahon as well. She was a suffragist and founded the Women's Overseas Hospital during World War I. So these are some of the things that we create using the resources provided by our partner, and these articles are created by their constituents that come to the events, as well as some Wikipedians from our area, and as well as our partner staff. Now here are the three primary challenges I have clocked as part of our current climate that we are living in. And I do want to say this presentation, as I was going through it, is very similar to the one I did during the COVID era, because we had to pivot a lot and change the way we do things during that time. We went from physical to virtual. We had to really look at what our partners were able to do to figure out, what we're asking of them, what's actually feasible. So I've highlighted three issues that we have seen. Being in DC, we get the question a lot, what is happening in the landscape where you are? Have you had organizations or institutions say we can't work with you anymore? That has not happened yet, to my surprise. I think it probably might happen eventually, but because we have such deep connections there, and a lot of the things, at least for now, are still the materials that we use for events are still available publicly. And I'll talk more about how we leverage those when our actual physical space is not available and our contact is no longer our contact. What happens in the future, but that gives us a little bit of flexibility there. So the three big challenges we see coming are shifting priorities. Obviously, it comes from the top down when we work with a lot of government organizations and agencies and institutions. Diminished capacity. People, as we say in DC, are getting doged. We also have with the most recent government shutdown with threats of more doging. So folks may not have jobs to come back to when the dust settles there in the most recent shutdown. And shutdowns these days are not particularly that uncommon. We have one every couple of years, and we even have folks on our board that are affected by them. So, and our last challenge is indifference. I have noted recently a little bit of a falling off in interest in things, and we can talk all day about what that could be. But these are just some things that I have found to be helpful when you start to see these shifting priorities. So obviously, when working with a partner, existing partner whose supervisor maybe says this might not be for us, what I like to do is give them as much content and metrics as possible to show why this is a good thing for them to do. So if their mission is still to get their resources out to the world for them to use and learn and distribute, then provide them with a one-sheeter of everything, maybe 10 things from their collection that, and the artists in their collection. Go to those articles, find the article views, look at how many times their museum or their gallery is listed in that article. Really make a one-sheeter and give it to them and say, this is what you present to them to show the value. So really show the value there. Obviously acknowledging the challenges, saying, just blowing it off and saying, oh, that doesn't matter, we can still do this, is not always a positive thing. Really have some empathy there. And also know when to pause and move on and possibly revisit. Sometimes there is just a time where the powers that be at that particular spot don't want to do this anymore, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that we can't continue the work. Okay, this is an encyclopedia that anybody can edit. Many of the resources are still available online. We can pick up the slack somewhere else. One of the things I try to do is redefine the relationships. Every once in a while, if I notice that things are slipping, I'll check in with the partners to see what is it that you can still do. Is it a staff problem? Is it that your supervisor doesn't care anymore? Is it that you just aren't into this anymore? And we assess what that would actually look like and figure out what isn't and isn't possible. One of the things I like to do is say, look, if you say you don't have a lot of time, because I am the only staff person and we are a very flexible organization, I will take things off their plate. So for example, at events, we have a work list, so maybe 40 to 50 names of articles for biographies are the example, things that they want to edit, and sometimes they say, I don't have time to put that list together. But I do have time to get you links to some of the sources that we have. I will put that list together for you and send it a list to your links and sources, and that's another thing that they don't have to do, and they could potentially hand off to me. So try to take as much off their plate as possible if you have the time to do so. Another thing is if they are unable to do, if a directive comes down and says you are no longer allowed to work with Wikipedia, like I said, that work with Wikipedia. Like I said, that has not happened with us yet, but I could see that coming in the future. One of the things to do if they are driven, because we do have some people who are driven in their own personal time, make sure that you maintain lines of communication with them, if not in their professional capacity, if they choose to in their personal capacity, so they have access to other events. I do find, especially as people are getting doge and let go, that they do go to similar roles in more private organizations, and if you lose that contact, you might lose their motivation. As we've mentioned a couple of times at other events, other panels this time, it really does take a certain type of person to want to do this work. And we are losing editors, so I think we would really be doing ourselves a disservice if we don't maintain connections with people who have moved on to other organizations. One of the things obviously is to have an idea of smaller organizations, so potentially connecting with organizations that have similar missions that are smaller. For example, we have, like I said a couple times, very solid relationships with the National Gallery of Art, but we also have a lot of small private museums in DC. Ones that former Gilded Age mansions from Meriwether Post, for example, has a museum there, which is quite pleasant. And there's some modern art museums that are tucked in the areas where the embassies are and things like that. So you can pivot this work to other organizations that don't have the restrictions, and meanwhile, still complete the mission or move towards fulfilling the mission of the larger organizations. They can't do the work, but you're still keeping the ball rolling. Another thing is the really tempting, let's say you really had a hard stop. One of the things that we did during COVID, and this is one of the things that I hope that we don't have to get to this point, but if it did happen, consider us as a chapter, as an organization, hosting an independent event that's not necessarily tied to a partner organization, because that will allow you to continue to get your metrics. Let's say you're working on an event about 19th century women artists, and you do an independent event where you invite people from the community or new editors, existing editors, whatever it may be. You can still do that work, so if somebody comes back to you at a later time and says, we want to revive this, or I'm still interested in this, you can say, oh, the work is still happening, here's a great list I have for you, or some things that were created. We do know that there was a time where things will be a no-go, where things will just stop and we probably won't get them back. I'm hoping it won't get to that point, but it may happen. One of the things that I note when creating our work list for events and having our partners pull sources from their collections is that we can have a list of women, for example, and they could all be notable women, but many times they don't have secondary sources to cite, so we can't create the article. So that's one of the reasons, Women in Red has this great list, but there aren't a lot of sources about those women out there. So one of the things I do with the Smithsonian, for example, is I encourage them to have their interns write and blog, because they are an authoritative source over there, have them write and blog about some of these women, so that creates a source for us. Now, the way I'm looking at it and the way it applies to this presentation and this topic is that even if somebody can no longer do work with Wikipedia, and in your goodbye message to them, remind them that there is a way that you can still help us by creating secondary sources that we can find on our own. And I think that's really important, and a way for them to stay involved while keeping their distance and keeping and making sure they are still in line with their own directives. Audience indifference is something that we've noticed quite some time. We have had some drop off here and there with some partners, but then again, we'll have an event where 5 people show up, and then we'll have an event where 60 people show up. It really runs the gamut, and it depends on the constituents of our partner organization and that particular topic. I think it's really important to be intentional about partner cultivation. But at the same time, if you have a partner and they're consistently having events with 3 people showing up and the 3 people are not very engaged, for example, I had somebody who, I was walking them through creating a username, they said, I can't even do this is too hard for me, I'm gonna go. And at that point, you know, you wanna say, you know, let me walk you through it, and I tried to do that, but sometimes they just didn't have the motivation at that point, so I gave them my contact information and said that we would connect later. But I think it's really important when working with partners to find the ones that are motivated. Now, just because the people who came to their events aren't motivated doesn't mean that you can't continue to work with them, the staff there, to do things internally as more of a larger initiative. So with that, I will stop. We have three minutes, and really just to summarize everything, if you would take away 3 points from this, make sure if somebody comes to you and they say, I have a directive that I can't do this anymore, they want the administration, don't want heat from the administration or wherever it may be, be prepared with metrics to show them the benefit of Wikipedia, be prepared to take sources and things from them to use at other events, and be okay with moving on and potentially keeping the ball rolling with another organization. So those are just things that we have found that have helped. I have had organizations that have gone MIA for 3 years and have come back to me and say, oh, my new supervisor likes this project, let's keep going. And you don't want to abandon them completely, just be ready to pick up and move. Any questions in our last 2 minutes? Chris?
When it comes to metrics, you said that presenting a lot of metrics to a partner is a great way to help create buy-in and sort of interest in a potential program. Are there metrics that you found resonate well with many partners that Wikimedia DC has worked with? Or are there metrics that you're finding like don't seem to matter or maybe aren't as impressive to partner institutions in general?
Yeah, I think the page views of their own organizational, their own institution or museums, page views of things in their collection, so particular pieces of art and artists, and how many times people were clicking back through to their actual museum page. So sometimes I'll take the page views tool and show like, here's an artist that was edited, here's a piece of work in the collection, and then I'll plot it using the page views tool on how many times on the actual museum to show like, hey, people are going here, and then getting back and learning more about it.
And these are like links to like databases of exhibits or works that they have, for example?
Yeah, so they can monitor like the click-throughs directly, but from Wikipedia to their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's they like to see that to show that they're getting information from it. Rita? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. In the hypothetical situation that one of your partners said that they could no longer continue editing Wikipedia, would it be possible to direct them maybe to Wikidata, which would be less public-facing, but perhaps more in line with a GLAM metadata work, creating people on Wikidata, sourcing biographic data that would be perhaps less political or less public-facing and more bibliography?
I think it's definitely possible. I think it would depend on how much their supervisor knew, how much the projects were tied together, because people are so scared right now that if, we have this letter from Congress come about Wikipedia, and if they're told that they can't work on particular things, and then if they find out that Wikidata basically is part of the project. So I think it's definitely a tactic to try to see how much courage they have to do it anyway, but I think it's definitely an option. And we do find that a lot of people will sit and edit Wikidata stuff as opposed to creating articles, which is always a good job done. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I'm just curious, like different types of organizations are under varying, amounts of pressure from the administration, either real or perceived. I'm just wondering if you have perceived any patterns of what kinds of organizations, are more or less willing to partner.
Surprisingly, not particularly yet, and that's the weird thing. I was fully expecting to get some calls that said they can't work with us anymore, specifically from National Gallery, because our treasurer is, as Sarah is at the Smithsonian. I think she might be protecting us a little bit, but I think if she wasn't there, we could potentially have done that. But I have seen a little bit of every couple of years a pattern with the National Archives. because when the archivist changes and they move on, but that would be the only one that I've noticed, and it's also the staff moves around quite a bit. Well, every time we try to revive it, someone gets shifted to a different department. You saw?
Yeah, I was surprised you mentioned, I don't know if you remember if you defined them as partners, but the institution in Tennessee and Florida.
Yes.
Do you see that as the future of, the chapters or user groups that is reaching beyond your physical borders to, more distant places?
Yeah, we do that, even since I've been here in 2017, we always get random phone calls from people saying, when I looked up Wikimedia chapters, here who I found, and that's how they came to us, and we never turn anybody away. But I mean, places like that, they have their own restrictions with things and everything, but I think it's definitely in the cards for the future, more of that.
Sorry, Ariel, we have to
Yep.
move on to the next session.
Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bueno, las slides están en inglés, así que va a ser fácil para que ustedes entiendan.
The slides will be in English, so it will be easy for you to understand.
Mi nombre nombre es Oscar Costero, ustedes me conocen como el Wikilatinos, pero también soy parte de una organización, una futura organización que se llama Language Diversity Hub, o el Hub de Lenguas Diversas de Wikimedia.
My name is Oscar, but you also know me as part of Wiki Latinos, but I'm also part of another organization called Language Diversity Hub.
Sí. Y bueno, básicamente es una organización formada por capítulos, grupos de usuarios, diferentes personas que trabajan para la diversidad del lenguaje en Wikimedia, sobre todo de lenguas minoritarias.
It's a organization with composed of chapters, user groups, and its focus is to repeat that again, the last part?
Está formada por personas que básicamente que quieren la diversidad del lenguaje para lenguas minoritarias o con problemas para tener una enciclopedia.
It is composed by people who believe in the importance of having language diversity, especially around minority languages.
Perfecto. Y bueno, vamos a empezar con cuál es el problema, cuál es el reto que tenemos por delante. Empezamos con que estas comunidades que queremos apoyar, la mayoría están en el sur global y básicamente no tienen mucha accesibilidad al internet, muchas de ellas ni siquiera tienen acceso a electricidad, y ya eso nos pone una barrera muy importante para introducirlos en una plataforma en línea.
What you see in the slides, but it's around communities that specifically that exist mostly in the global south, that a lot of times are limited access to resources, including electricity, so it creates a bigger barrier and a disadvantage, because how do we introduce them to a platform that is online?
Sí, y son grupos minoritarios, indígenas, que quieren tener su visibilidad, su huella en digital, en internet, ni siquiera en Wikipedia, en internet, no tienen ningún tipo de acceso a su cultura, a su historia, y encuentran o quieren encontrar en algo como Wikipedia una forma de preservación de su cultura y de su existencia. Muchas de estas lenguas están de hecho en peligro de extinción.
A lot of these communities, indigenous communities or minority language speakers, are looking to preserve or at least have representation on the internet, and they're looking to Wikipedia to be a place where they can preserve and secure the languages. Go again.
Some of these are in danger of becoming extinct. Some of these
Sí,
languages.
muchas de ellas están en posibilidades o están ya en peligro de extinción.
A lot of these languages and indigenous communities who are speaking it are in
Facing extinction.
facing extinction.
Well, I don't know how do you
Facing
translate.
extinction. Yeah,
The
let's
language
go
is
for that.
facing extinction. Okay, bueno.
Yeah, let's go for that.
Hay otras comunidades, bueno, la mayoría de las comunidades, de nuevo, el sur global, tienen dificultades económicas, entonces su tiempo voluntario es nulo, y por lo cual, de nuevo, ser voluntarios en una plataforma como Wikipedia es un lujo, básicamente un lujo que esas comunidades no se pueden prestar.
Again, in the global south, there's a lot of economic barriers. Therefore, volunteering is considered a luxury. So when you are asking these folks to contribute to Wikipedia and to volunteer their time for Wikipedia is something that they won't be able to do.
Sí, y bueno, hay una plataforma que se llama la incubadora, Incubator, que es básicamente la plataforma que la fundación, bueno, el movimiento Wikimedia apoya a estas comunidades para integrarse, para una forma de colocarlos en un horno y tratar de convertir esas comunidades en una Wikipedia, un Wikcionario, una plataforma wiki.
We created this platform called Incubator that is
Nosotros
you?
lo llamamos
Oh, no.
el movimiento.
El movimiento, okay. The Wikimedia movement created it? The Wikimedia movement created a platform called Incubator, where people can add their languages and preserve it through wiki dictionaries and other products.
Y eso es donde nosotros estamos buscando hacer impacto. Sabemos que la incubadora es como, yo doy la analogía de que es un horno, o sea que es donde se crece un pastel, pero este horno está tú hablas español y este horno está en chino. Y en el caso de la incubadora es eso. La plataforma está en inglés, es una plataforma Wikipedia que está en inglés y es como, bueno, presenta en sí unas barreras muy fuertes para que las personas voluntarien.
Oscar likes to use a analogy that the incubator works like an oven, and if you're like baking a cake, but if you're baking a cake that is in Spanish and the oven is in Chinese, it's not going to be productive. And the problem right now is that the incubator is in English, so how to
Cómo introducir a esas comunidades que no hablan inglés a que creen su enciclopedia.
how do you introduce a platform that is right now in English to communities that don't speak English so they can then create their the preservation of their languages?
Vamos a tratar de hacer las preguntas.
Es una clarificación.
¿Ah?
Una clarificación.
Diga.
Están diciendo que el incubador es solamente en inglés, no hay acceso en otras lenguas.
No, la plataforma como tal está en inglés. Puedes traducirla a tu lenguaje nativo, pero por default está en inglés.
There was a clarifying question that are you saying that the incubator is only in English? And Oscar just responded that the incubator is in English, but you can put it in other languages.
Pero aún así el hub de lenguas diversas lo que está buscando es, a pesar de esta dificultad que no podemos solventar, es una cosa del movimiento, la incubadora no podemos resolverla, queremos apoyar a las comunidades en esta etapa crítica de crecimiento o de básicamente nacimiento, porque ni siquiera es que están creciendo, son comunidades que estamos tratando de, en muchos casos, sembrarlas en la tierra y que ver que florezcan.
We're trying to, even though the incubator is in English, we're still trying to build the sustainable and community-led work in these organizations, in these communities, because really at this stage is more about burying the seed and see them grow rather than even starting, rather than
que básicamente no es crecimiento, sino es nacimiento de las comunidades.
it's not just growth, it's literally just giving them the opportunity of birth.
Like a starting
I have a newfound
It's
appreciation for
the translate, right?
interpreters. Yeah.
Pero veo a Andy Sica por ahí, entonces capaz él pueda ayudarme.
Okay. Do
Hey.
one sentence and I translate. One sentence and I translate.
Or after this session, if that's.
Yeah, maybe after this session.
Bueno, entonces queremos también hacer conexiones con la fundación, con afiliados, con POCs regionales, con personas que están trabajando en Wikipedia y porque básicamente es crear una organización desde el suelo en una zona que tiene todas estas barreras, pero es igual lo que están haciendo muchas personas en el movimiento. Lo que tenemos es que que estas comunidades tienen todas estas limitantes, pero hay muchas cosas que se pueden hacer. Y esa es parte de nuestra misión, porque bueno, yo soy de Venezuela, bueno,
Even though there are all these barriers, we want to strengthen our connections with the different foundation affiliates and regional hubs in order to figure out a path to make the language diversity hub grow.
Correcto. Entonces, bueno, hemos tenido ya 3 años de evolución en donde creamos unos pilares básicamente para trabajar con estas comunidades.
We've been working for 3 years at this point, and we've created, based on our experience, the following strategic pillars.
El acceso a la computadora o al internet no es el único problema. El acceso al código wiki es otro problema que enfrenta esta comunidad, entonces el apoyo técnico es vital.
Access to the internet is not the only problem. There's also the access or knowledge to edit wiki code that
que se les hace muy complicado aprender y donde necesitan mucho apoyo.
because they don't have access to the internet, they're not going to know how to do wiki codes, so it's going to be a lot harder for them to learn. So that's one of the first things that they're doing, is providing capacity and technical support.
Y el otro, hablamos de lo costoso que es el tiempo voluntario, y otro de los pilares es que tenemos que, aunque suene para muchas personas ridículo en el movimiento, tenemos que pagarle a los voluntarios.
Because volunteering is such a luxury in communities that are already lacking economic support, even though it sounds ridiculous
No,
or
it's ridiculous for some people.
for some people, it sounds ridiculous for some people. We do, one of our strategic pillars is to pay people to edit Wikipedia and work on things.
Sí. Y para eso tenemos microgrants y otros sistemas que queremos implementar para estas personas. Y también estamos centrándonos en una comunidad que va a navegar alrededor de un comité de viraje que está formado por capítulos de distintas partes.
Another strategic pillar is that we're going to create community-centered governance to provide sustainability of growth in the regional.
Ok, y bueno, rapidito, porque ya se me está acabando la mitad del tiempo. Estos son los grupos de usuarios y capítulos que ahorita forman parte del hub. Pero vamos a tratar de... Es una gobernanza que es muy compartida y queremos rotar e incluir a nuevos grupos, a nuevas personalidades. Queremos inclusive, y esta es la primera organización que lo hace, incluir actores externos. Por ejemplo, Rising Voices es una organización que se llama Global Voices, una suborganización que se llama Global Voices y no es una organización wiki.
The following wiki organizations on the slides are part of the steering committee leadership. We try to make it as democratic as possible, so there's like a rotation of who is the leader in given time. And unlike any other wiki group, we actually include people, external people who have experience in this matter. So Rising Voices is one of them that are not a wiki group, but they're giving us external support.
Sí, y por eso, bueno, también queremos hacer un grupo que sea un grupo con miembros que básicamente se dediquen a idear las nuevas fases y que traten de imaginar un futuro, porque básicamente es eso, estamos tratando de ver cómo funciona un hub y cómo imaginamos un hub con distintas partes o distintos aliados.
Essentially, this is we're at the beginning stage, so we want to, as part of the steering committee leadership, one of the purposes is to grow members and have the members sort of guide how we can make the Language Diversity Hub work when we have people from so various backgrounds and allies working on it.
Y bueno, nosotros hicimos un plan, el plan de trabajo que queremos hacer por los próximos 12 meses se basa, yo creo que más enfocado en la mentoría uno a uno con estas comunidades y queremos tratar de solventar, bueno, en la medida de lo posible, las personas que son expertas en un tema que les puedan ayudar, inclusive que estas personas no hablan el idioma, por ejemplo.
How we're working right now is we established these programs for the next 12 months. They include networking calls or engagement hours, topical workshops, but primarily we're focusing right now on mentorship. So we have people who are experts giving mentorship to folks who are coming into the wiki space, inclusive of.
Y básicamente es básicamente formalizar algo que ya estábamos haciendo de forma informal mucho en el movimiento. Yo ayudé a una comunidad entre Colombia y Venezuela, que es la comunidad Guayú, y es formalizar un apoyo que ya existía y darle una visión que sea más estructurada y no sea una cosa que, bueno, una cosa que solo se hace una vez.
This type of program already existed, it was just in an unofficial form. This year, what we're trying to do is formalize it, create structure around it, so we can do it long term rather than just one at a time.
Sí. Y bueno, tenemos también otras cosas que estamos ideando, pero básicamente todo gira en torno a apoyar a estas comunidades, buscar cuáles son sus dificultades, tratar de documentarlo y tratar de documentar nosotros esas dificultades para tratar de cambiar el problema que tenemos, que es la incubadora.
At this point, we're trying out different strategies and different tactics, but the goal right now is to listen to the communities, document their problems, and document how we can potentially fix it through the incubator.
¿A través de la incubadora o sin la incubadora?
Through the incubator, or maybe not the incubator.
Sí, porque hay otro aspecto que no comenté al principio, que otro reto más. Muchas de estas lenguas, y me lo recordó Johnny que entró al salón, es que estas son lenguas orales, a veces no tienen ni siquiera escritura. Entonces, ¿cómo haces una Wikipedia escrita para una comunidad que solo habla el idioma?
Because another challenge that we have found, shout out to Johnny for flagging that, that some of these languages are older languages. They don't have any documentation existing within their own community. So how do you bring those languages into written form on Wikipedia when they've only existed orally?
Y bueno, queremos también hacer una colaboración estratégica con la Fundación Wikimedia. Ellos tienen un departamento dedicado a, básicamente, es dedicado a apoyar a estas comunidades de alguna forma y también de alguna forma a tratar de hacer una medición sobre cómo ayudarlos, cómo están creciendo. Muy numérica, eso sí, muy enfocada en métricas tradicionales de número de ediciones, número de voluntarios, pero que al fin nosotros tenemos que tratar de unirnos y tratar de solventar ese problema de alguna forma.
We're also trying to collaborate with the Wikimedia Foundation that already has an existing network and system to support this kind of work, but a lot of their metrics is geared around how many volunteers we can get, or just numerical metrics, and how can we figure out a different way of tracking the impact when this is a completely different problem that you would find in the wiki space.
Y bueno, este es el call to action, el llamado a la acción. Ahorita estamos en el proceso de reclutar a las comunidades que vamos a apoyar por estos 12 meses. Tenemos un formulario abierto para que estas comunidades se postulen y apliquen para ser parte de esta mentoría, de este proceso de apoyo, por mí y otras personas que son miembros del Language Diversity Hub.
We are currently, this is our call to action. We have a form open to have language communities apply to be part of this mentorship program. Did you talk about it?
No. También estamos buscando colaborar con otros afiliados aquí en la región de Norteamérica, con otros hubs regionales, porque bueno, estamos también creando un hub de una forma, que es un hub temático. Sabemos capaz la vía dificultosa que es formar un hub.
We're also talking to affiliates and other regional hubs so we can learn from them and co-develop projects because it's very difficult to create hubs.
Más o menos. Sí, y bueno, también con otros, no solamente el departamento que les hablé de la Fundación Wikimedia, para básicamente para que también nos ayuden a solventar el problema de fondo, que es un problema que el Language Diversity Hub no va a resolver, y tratar de tener una solución, digamos, para estas comunidades, para que tengan su huella digital en Internet, que es básicamente tener una enciclopedia, un diccionario.
In addition to looking for partnerships with the Wikimedia Foundation, we're also looking for support and mentorship around funding the Language Diversity Hub, so we can figure out ways that we can ensure that these indigenous and language minorities communities can create their digital footprint by preserving their language in Wikipedia.
Okay. Y bueno, y quiero cerrar con una frase que fue dicha por una voluntaria de Ghana, de un lenguaje que se llama Dagbani, y nos dijo, eso fue una de las charlas que tuvimos, porque hicimos unas charlas básicamente exploratorias, y dijo esta frase tan bonita que bueno, que básicamente estamos democratizando el conocimiento, haciendo visibles a voces que antes no eran visibles, y bueno, nos llamó mucho la atención. Eso es lo que estamos haciendo, lo que queremos hacer en estos 12 meses y a más futuro, para que estas comunidades, a pesar de todas estas barreras, tengan eso, una presencia en Wiki. Y bueno, pueden leerla allí.
We want to finish our presentation with a quote from one of the attendees on one of the exploratory workshops that we did around the Language Diversity Hub, and she said that preserving languages it helps democratize knowledge, as you can see in the quote in the slide. But her point was, when we ensure that we preserve these languages on Wiki, we are ensuring their preservation and
Yes.
And that.
Muchas gracias. Y bueno, está en nuestro correo electrónico si quieren o si conocen a una comunidad, que eso es importante, que necesiten nuestro apoyo.
There's our email address if you want to join, or if you know of a community that would need our support, please do email us. Thank you.
Bueno, tenemos minutos. No sé si hay preguntas, questions.
Are there any questions?
Y si quieres ya, gracias. Thank you, Yalmari, for your free labor.
Let's give her a big hand.
I can switch back to English.
Hay una pregunta aquí.
Sí, si quieres.
Yeah, does the Wikimedia do anything, well, I was gonna say that the point about unwritten languages, only oral languages, is very important. When I was a boy, I believe most languages were unwritten, okay? Maybe it's changed now, maybe a little bit more than half are written languages. So my question is Wikimedia doing anything to create an alphabet for languages that don't have one? And if not, do you know of any organizations that do that?
Bueno, for Wikimedia, you refer to the Wikimedia Foundation or the Wikimedia movement?
Well, the whole organization.
The whole movement,
Wiki,
okay. The whole
like-
movement and the Wikimedia Foundation, they don't. There is organization out there that are trying to document what you're referring, like how many languages are still there that doesn't have like a written language. Is that the...
Yeah, the Summer Institute of Linguistics, for example, documents languages, but I don't know if do they attempt to create a written language for each, alphabet for each language?
I think that depends of the community. That's another issue. There's many languages out there. We have one of the steering committee affiliate group is Wikimedia Indonesia. In Indonesia we have 800 different languages.
I see.
It is the largest diversity language in the world, like the largest country with, or the country with the largest diversity on languages in the world. And I talked with that person and they told me, well, we need even the Indonesian government doesn't know how to reach out to those communities. So the level of, obviously, of complexity is huge.
So it might be done regionally, but
It could be done regionally. We're trying to document that as well, like how many languages there are. For that, I think the incubator is good. The incubator have like the possibility to list how many languages are in the incubator, how many are active, that sort of thing. But they're not going to document the communities that are not in the incubator. There is no one in the Wikimedia movement, I can say that frankly, looking for other languages to join the movement.
not necessarily to join Wikipedia, but just to create an alphabet for them, so that they
there
can.
is an organization though, WikiConference. They are based here in New York City. That they are doing cultural preservation of those languages. Daniel was supposed to be here. Probably he didn't come. But yes, we are trying to reach out to those organizations to try to see how they can essentially join the movement or try to have an alphabet and how to have a dictionary.
Thank you.
Pregunta, otra persona.
Se lo puedo hacer dos veces si prefiere, en
Sí.
inglés o en castellano.
Como quieras.
Okay. Pues, ¿cómo imaginaría usted una solución para el diccionario oral en el futuro? ¿Podría ser una solución como Internet in a box, Internet en una caja de la fundación? Quizás para servir fuera del red en una forma oral, con historias orales o artículos orales?
Sí. Y
Doreva.
Doreva
So I'm asking,
mentions-
like, is there a solution for oral dictionaries that could be outside of the internet? So the foundation has this internet in a box that can go around with a little Raspberry Pi computer that has Spanish and English Wikipedia on it that can be given around.
And that project, I don't know if it is still continuing. Talking about lack of funding. Internet in a Box, it was a really nice project that they, I think, developed essentially from Africa, the sub-Saharan continent. It will be nice. It will be nice. I don't have the perfect answer. I would love to see more efforts, trial and errors. Let's try to see what other organizations outside of the Wikimedia movement are doing. I think oral to text is really hard. Wikimedia Sweden tried to connect with an organization that working with keywords, like keywords that are for essentially endangered language communities. Yeah, they're trying to approach how do you develop a keyword for an oral language. So that's another issue. Like, okay, so it is so complex. We're trying to focus obviously in the easy part, that is trying to bring them into the incubator. No, try to get growing or try to be to those communities to grow in the incubator. But there is so many singularities that I think okay, it is out of the spot. Obviously, it is important for those experiments to continue, and that exactly that internet in the book, I think is what is continuing. I don't know.
That's our last question.
Última pregunta.
No más, lo siento.
Un comentario. Si quieres, después nos acercamos y porque me estás diciendo no más preguntas. They're telling me no more questions.
No más.
Gracias.
Lo siento, well, you have 4.
There's no creating a keyboard without an alphabet.
Yes. What can you tell? Who's next? I have a. No, tell.
Sí, él conoció al venezolano el año pasado, you remember. ¿Recuerdas ese? Oh, Emmanuel.
Yes. Oh.
Nice.
Hi. We're still friends. We're like outside. Trumpy. I don't think he actually is. I think he's just.
I don't know how you can possibly have an oral Wikipedia.
Because he was my roommate when I was there. So we were just like now we're still friends. Not like every day, but like. Well. But he pokes me, and I poke him back. And I think it's like he's a little brother in a way, not like that vibe.
Because sign language
It's the Cubans got to it.
Mean absolutely nothing. Sign language is always an iconic part of it. So like this, that's me. And it's sort of obvious. There are some that are less obvious, but like this one. This means forget. So sort of coming out of
Like every time he talks, I'm a little bit
only a mnemonic, right?
You're so young.
You can remember it, but you won't understand it. So the point is, there's no way to break down a morpheme, a meaning, into separate parts.
No, you're good.
In ASL. And there's no way to just do it by context.
Thank you. Continue. Sorry. I want your contact.
Jamie will be your timekeeper.
Okay.
I feel like these are better. They're more comprehensive.
Gender gap
and those ones are missing. So whatever. FedEx missing. They're missing.
I saw that everyone
sorry. But cool.
Just make sure I sort of introduce myself and
Nice
then
to
go back
meet
to
you.
you. And this was great. And there's so many. Also,
I'll actually be back in here afterwards.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just.
Do I need to stay in here for the hour or
separate from the gender diversity stuff? We've worked with a bunch of folks in the Doc Bunny group and other sort of languages that are happening. So I was like, oh, I didn't even know this was
okay.
happening.
Okay.
I feel like we should schedule that meeting, but
Thank you.
just kind of make sure. Yeah. So I just wanted to visually introduce myself. You're not here, but are you in New York? Okay, you're in New York.
Nearby.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, we're in, well, I'm physically in Chicago,
I got
but we're lots
you.
of places, so.
Okay.
We're gonna,
Yeah.
I will email you guys back.
We're gonna have an event actually.
Just so you know.
Both email, right? So,
Yeah, so definitely you'll see this when you've gone for 10 minutes. This when you have 5 minutes left. Oh.
Just
Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. Oh, okay. These are different.
Want to do something right now, chicken.
Hold on.
Yeah, I got it, thank you.
This one you have 15 minutes. This one you have 10 minutes left. This one you have 5 minutes left.
We need you.
3 minutes.
Dákaro.
Okay? And I'll try to make sure you see that. Definitely go ahead and start.
Hi everyone, my name is Safiwa Zamara. I am a Wikipedia and digital content specialist at IU Indianapolis, which is, I am a student worker there. I just finished my undergrad, and and also I'm here with my supervisors, Olivia and Jerry. They're back there. They also helped oversee this project. Okay, so what is a Wikipedia and digital content specialist? As I talked about earlier, we're student workers. Our university, Indiana University, Indianapolis, hires students as a Wikipedia and digital content specialist to edit Wikipedia articles in different ways and contribute in different ways. The students write or contribute entries related to Central Indiana mostly, but each student has their own entries as well, so they're able to contribute accordingly. For training for each student, they use the Wiki Edu modules to kind of get acquainted with Wikipedia on the back end, because most students, they learn about Wikipedia maybe in elementary, middle school. That's their first exposure to it, and we'll talk about that later. So they don't really know some of the rules, the policies, and things like that, and that can be very intimidating as a first-time editor. And after developing that baseline of skills, they're able to focus on their own personal interests, and it's amazing how each student decides to contribute to Wikipedia. Everyone kind of has their own lane. So these are some of the stats that we did from October 1st of 2023, which I believe is when this started. Is that true? Yes. So when this project started, all the way to the snapshot of August 10th. So we had 9 editors overall, a bunch of edits, which is amazing. I actually have a fellow student who, her goal is, she has like different milestones of how many edits, and when I started editing, I really didn't care to like save as much, so I don't have as many edits as she's like so many edits, over 1,000. And she's only been, I think she's less than a year in. So we have 59 articles created, and you can see the rest. I have a link to the outreach dashboard, which if they share the slides, you can also see. So that's just some of the work that we've been doing on this side. So this is how we engage with our campus community as well as the surrounding area. So we've had several editathons. We've done Pride Month, Black History Month, Women's History Month, editathons, Afrofuturism, environmental justice. I think this is a great way, it's a low stakes environment for new editors because they can engage with people who have been editing for a long time, but also other people who have never edited or done, like knew that they could edit Wikipedia at all. And it's great to like work together to get everyone up to speed. And I've gotten to actually train a couple people at an editathon to make their first edit, and they're very proud at the end when they're able to do that. This is some more of our community engagement. As you can see, that's Jamie, Olivia, myself. We were at Butter Fine Art Fair last year. We were on a panel about some of the work that we've done in the community, as well as we also, at the same event, we did a collaboration with Black Lunch Table. We had an artist photo booth. So a lot of Black artists are not represented on in the Wikimedia. They don't have like pictures up on Wikimedia, so we took pictures there and they eventually were uploaded. And so eventually when those articles are created, they already have a photo available. And this is an introduction to the research that I did. So the question I posed is, will paying students to edit result in more Wikipedians? Will they be retained, and will they still have the same passion to continue editing after they graduate or leave the project? We examined the participation of new editors during and after being a paid editor, to find any gaps in student engagement as it relates to editing, to find opportunities in student engagement that will result in editor retention after being a paid editor, and also to gain insight on what their experience was, how they feel about the program overall, and maybe some changes that we can make along the way from this research. So when I was putting together this research project and how I was going to do it, some of the things I found was that there was very limited research on the retention of young editors. I found that Wikipedia editors are, mostly young and male, and there were a lot of people that were younger than 21. And most of the surveys are done opt-in surveys, so this is people just voluntarily giving their information. So there's limitations in that method as well. Some of the issues that we currently see on Wikipedia is that there is a large gender gap. So having students edit kind of bridges that gap, because currently we actually have mostly women doing the student editing. And there's also a racial bias that comes into play. And so if you have students that have different interests and they bring their own perspectives and backgrounds, it adds to that diversity of article creation and also diversity in editors as well. And the age of college students are pretty much 18. I did 30 because we have some that are closer to master's students' age and things like that. So that's why I have that demographic listed there. And that also adds diversity in age as well. There's knowledge gaps in usership as well. When people make their own account, sometimes they may not, if they're doing it on their own, they may not feel compelled to continue editing. So being able to edit in a community setting or with others adds to more articles being created and more contributions to Wikipedia. So I did this as a qualitative research project in a semi-structured interview format. All of the students had the same questions, and we had 4 current students and 1 former student. And that's the rate of responses we had 2 that were able to participate. Okay, so the first question was, what was your first introduction to Wikipedia? Most said they had early exposure around middle school or elementary, and they were using it casually just when Google something and Wikipedia is the first to pull up. Nowadays, I heard in another session that it's AI that pulls up first, but back then it was Wikipedia. Another thing, they used it in education and academic settings, so that's their first introduction to Wikipedia. And I think the thing that I can take away the most is that there's a lot of visibility and accessibility to Wikipedia. They were asked what brought them to applying to this role, and most of them said that it was alignment between their interests and career goals. They were interested in GLAMs and preservation. Some had a passion for writing and communication. Some had a motivation to understand and contribute to Wikipedia. So that was their driver to applying for the role. Did you contribute to Wikipedia before becoming a paid editor? Most had never contributed at all. Some said that they may have just as an unregistered user. They were in mostly informal settings, and a lot of them had intimidation towards editing because there are so many rules and it looked complicated than other platforms, other social media platforms that are more gamified. So most of our editors are very new, under a year of editing. I think I might be the longest editor right now. I have almost 2.5 years. Some of the barriers that students have experienced our sources being behind a paywall, but we found some workarounds. But sometimes those things don't work because as most of these sources, they want to make money. So you have to figure out new ways to get these sources, and libraries are a great place to go and get these resources. And as a student, I've learned a lot about that. Another issue is that women have less secondary sources. I can say the same for minoritized people as well, have a lot less sources, and as you know, the things going on in our country right now, unfortunately, a lot of these sources are being taken down as well. Some students had never done encyclopedic writing, so that was a barrier to overcome. And then the last one was unclear or insufficient feedback from admins and users about why certain contributions were rejected, so things getting marked for deletion or errors that came up and they weren't specific as to why, and some of those students found that to be a barrier as well. So what did students utilize more? Everyone said Wikipedia. They really didn't use Wikimedia Commons as much, so that's an area that we can work in. A lot of them said they had fear for copyright and content ownership, so we can hopefully help students be able to gauge what is copyright and what is in the free domain. And then a preference for familiar text-based editing. They had other familiarity with Wikipedia rather than Wikimedia. Have there been opportunities such as community events that they could participate in? And a lot of them said yes, but they had a lot of schedule conflicts because they are students, full-time students mostly. So they weren't able to participate as much, but they were very aware of the events. After your time as a paid editor is over, would they continue to edit? And a majority said yes, so 3 students were able to say yes. And I think that the reason why someone said no, if I remember correctly, it was because their goal is to be a writer on a large scale, so they wanted to work on their own website. So maybe they're gonna make their own Wikipedia, I don't know. But they had bigger dreams, I guess, than Wikipedia. Oh, and I wanted to mention that some of the things that they took away from was that they were going to transfer the skills that they learned on Wikipedia to other things. So there's a lot that they learned as far as putting together articles that they can honestly use those skills in other ways, whether at their job or other career fields. So how can we engage more young people to continue Wikipedia editing or get involved? Education and media literacy, which I was happy that there was a lot of sessions about that. I learned a lot from many of the sessions about ways that we can help students understand what sources are reliable, how to find out if a person is notable or not, things like that. We can also improve the interface and design. So someone mentioned that they would like to see it more of a feed style of Wikipedia, and I found out that there's some things that are already in the works, so they're going to be excited to look out for that. And then more interest-based engagement, so seeing what students are actually interested in, whether it's the topics that we choose in our editathon, some of the issues going on in the world, maybe that would help students become more interested in editing, and honestly, seeing their impact as well would be important to show them that what we're doing is, in fact, important in making the world a better place. So basically, we can close the knowledge gaps. This revealed a lot of issues within how students view Wikipedia or how they interact with Wikipedia. Also, there's areas in Wikimedia Commons that can be, educated more on for students, helping them understand how to use the platform, and just honestly, maybe having more events that could allow them to engage with Wikimedia Commons use. There's also more opportunity to engage with the younger crowd, the middle school in elementary school age kids, even high school as well. I think that another session talked about that by the time you get to college, you already have a lot of preconceived notions about Wikipedia being unreliable, or whatever your thought of Wikipedia is kind of solidified by the time you get to college. So having that kind of programming earlier is very important. So does this answer a question? I think this research project did. I think for the most part, all the students want to continue, well, not all, 60% of the students want to continue to contribute to Wikipedia. Others will move on to something else. And for those that were able to respond, I know one of them is still editing today, so I think this program has really impacted our campus in a large scale. And as myself, I would have never thought I would have a place at Wikipedia, and I've had a lot of fun editing. And that's a sticker I made. We make lots of stickers. So that's also a fun thing that also I think students enjoy, is either getting stickers or some of our students get to design their stickers. Thank you. So that's our information. If you have any questions, we have time, a lot of time for questions. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. It's amazing, and I'm just curious as to do you think there's a benefit to describing the work as being like a job, like a Wikipedia content specialist, as opposed to calling it something else like a research fellow, or using more like academic language?
Jerry, do you want to take that one? Or Olivia?
Oh, give it to Olivia.
Okay. Because I don't really know how to answer that question, because for me, I really like the cool long name, but
I mean, I don't want to answer this question. I think it kind of goes to, like, why did you choose to apply? Like, you saw the job title. Like, what made you be like, okay, this is what I can do?
Well, I would say that Wikipedia is kind of a household name, so that caught my eye. And then I guess the digital content part, prior to this, at my previous student job, I did a lot of the social media. So it kind of tied in some of my interests in content creation. So that's what I thought it was. I didn't really quite know like what that portion meant, but I saw content, Wikipedia, and it made sense to me.
I have a follow-up to that. So like, were you engaged in Wikipedia at all?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
So I'll repeat the question. So she said, was I engaged in Wikipedia at all before I started editing? The answer is no, I was just a reader. So I've used Wikipedia probably since I was in first grade, when we first had, I remember specifically a teacher, we were learning how to write biographies, and she pulled up a biography on Wikipedia. So that was my first introduction to Wikipedia. And anytime I've ever Googled something, Wikipedia was the first to pull up, and I've said that multiple times. So that was my introduction to Wikipedia, which I think is, for most students, that seems to be the case. But I was not an editor at all. I never even made an unregistered edit.
Just to clarify, when you say paying Wikipedians, is the school
We
paying?
can't hear you.
So the question was, how are we being paid, basically? Yes.
Hi, I'm Jeannie. So we actually, in Indianapolis, there's the Central Indiana Community, what's the F? Foundation, and they have a library fund, and certain libraries within the city are able to apply for grant funding, and we have a grant, and we pay the students out of that budget.
That's great.
And they are included, when we write our grant proposal every year, we include how many students we're gonna hire, what projects they're gonna work on, and stuff like that. And that's part of why they always focus on Indiana and Indianapolis, is that's the whole point in our grant, is to build a community and to build up capacity at local cultural heritage institutions.
So how much were they paid?
The first year we got $120,000. Oh, how much are you all paid?
Yeah,
That
well,
part I don't know. Sorry.
you got paid.
15 an hour. Which, I mean, where I'm from, that's pretty good. It may be different in your state, like how good that is, but for minimum wage in Indiana is $7.25 still, so you can imagine. Yeah, I know. So I see some shocked faces. Yeah.
What was the maximum you could work a week?
I think, is it 20 hours? It depends on if you're an international student or not, but I'm not, so it's 29 hours a week is what I can do. And I think if you're international, it's 20 hours.
And did you do 29 or more?
I've done 29 before. Right now I'm kind of close, but because of class schedules and other things, internships, I'm not able to do that full 29.
Right.
But there are students that have done 29, correct? Close to 29? Yeah.
Will this program continue? Or is this just like a one-time thing?
No, it's continuing, right? Like until things.
We've had 3 years of funding. We just received our 4th year.
So just like
It'll depend on capacity for the next year.
So is it like just every year you see there's enough money and then?
Well, every year we just reapply for the grant and rewrite our grant proposal.
Okay, lunchtime.
This is really cool. I'm curious if there's any comparison to like places where people get paid through like class credit. You know, like there's some places where Wikipedia is a class, you get compensated, you know, through course credit versus getting paid in cash.
Well, when I was doing researching online, I didn't really see one like that. I've only seen the federal through the federal grants, like through work study programs. But which is complex because I actually talked to someone here who said that their school tried to do it the work study style and it didn't work out because of everything that's going on. Things are being cut, but I haven't seen that particular one.
So just thinking back to your slide about the number of edits that you all have done, 9 people, 10,000 something edits, which is a lot. It would be interesting to do a comparative thing of 6 people who are new to Wikipedia, not getting paid, right? And what's the number of edits that those people come up with across that period of time? My guess is yours is higher, and that would be a case for continuing that, and also a way of bridging the gaps that we have on Wikipedia. So that would be an additional really interesting comparison.
Yeah, because I think the perk of this is that I had at least in a day had 5 uninterrupted hours to be able to edit.
That's
so
what I was thinking.
If you're a student or if you're someone that's not being paid, you have to kind of fit it into your schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to add that the students do a little bit more than just editing as well. They make a lot of promotional materials for us, which they do a wonderful job, and they're very cute, and we get lots of compliments on them. And then they help us support local cultural heritage through events and stuff like that. Yeah, any other questions? Just so folks know, we're about 1 minute until 12, so if there's one more question.
How about the non-paid? Do you see yourself progressing past this? Do you see yourself editing without being paid, or do you see yourself pitching jobs to people to add content to Wikipedia?
I think. So I think I will continue to edit, and actually some of the responses from the students, they said, the ones that said that they were going to continue to edit, they had a list of things that they want to do after they're done with us. So I think everyone kind of has an idea of what they want to do. For instance, I want to do more branch out from just Indianapolis and Indiana things and see what other areas are of need, and probably do more Wikimedia stuff, because I do sometimes go to events and take pictures and things like that, so I think that would be interesting. And my brother, he covered All-Star Weekend as a student journalist, so he has a bunch of pictures that I need to upload, so stuff like that.
Great. Thank you.
Everyone, I have a quick announcement. We're doing another group photograph at 12:55 in the big hall downstairs. So anybody that wants to be a part of it, please come down. There's a lot of stuff happening and moving of things. So unfortunately, the time can't be shifted. We can't do it any other time. We can't do it anywhere else. So hopefully, whoever wants to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt. 12:55. 5 to 1. 12:55.
Can I make an announcement too? Eva's going to be on the job market soon, so if you've got a Wikipedia project you can work on.
What was that?
She's going to be on the job market. I'm not finding
It was so great. I wish. Another reason to win the lottery.
No, it's supposed to be 5 minutes.
What's the job you got let go from?
No. I have always worked part-time on this project.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I was working in the federal government, that's the job.
You're a student.
Yes.
Jerry,
Yeah,
I wasn't hearing this kind of drama from him.
Jerry and Olivia and Donna made sure that I still have this while I was
mostly you're working on the top of the list, and they were all mostly around. Not in the university article.
Wow, I'm so happy.
Well, besides that, trying to get an article in the life, what's the main library called?
It's called University Library. It's not very good.
Standalone. Oh, so we use the level.
Yeah. We haven't touched it, just have like conflict of interest.
You already get paid. What did I do? No, seriously, what the hell? And compare it to some of your peers, compare how many articles are about
Most of them die feeling unappreciated, other than
right. It's the first place, right?
We're in the
Just like
second
campus.
campus.
That was the only way official
Bloomington is the
commemoration.
big campus.
With the
Even
two,
though they had other things that they felt like that.
Well, we have the pools.
We have the
two,
pool.
250 meters. That's right, you're right.
We were WikiConference was at our institution last year.
Right. I didn't go
That was
last
the
year, I
campus.
know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is
what a great place.
it a good coverage of that?
I don't know.
Well, I think.
Now, one of the good things about
Yeah.
is Wikipedia too long.
I gotta go hear people
I
talk,
think it's
but
good that it's long.
on the library talks and get the
And
group
have
up,
a
that sounds
large
great.
background. I make
And
them put
compare yourself to
everybody
other
they
schools,
work
see, even the number of categories that you're in, that are in
Oh,
your.
we're working on
They're just gonna make
that
it
special
feel
commons
safe,
right
but
now.
I'm able to
Yeah,
say,
categories. I love
everybody
categories.
that's working. That is a good point.
Exactly, right.
That
But
this should,
categories
you
are
know, this should be one of the strengths of
Okay,
I
thank you.
put all that in there. And when Wayne Garfield, I think he put everything he worked on, and all the people in all the countries he worked for. It's like there's a bunch of newspaper articles not gonna have that information. I mean, because, they're limited by, by. Whereas we can just put all that in. It helps the artists if they love it. Okay, bye-bye. Just want to thank you. I think just because of my own worries about all the devices. I think but that's a trade-off. I think it's actually, as
Yeah. That's all you would really need.
Well, I was
Have we gotten any complaints about paid editing?
How are you?
Just avoided the university.
Oh, you're the paid editor.
Yes, absolutely. I think that only goes If they see that it could be a real job, that is, it would have, that's also more validation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe they just come and talk.
But I'm like publicly on it. Don't leave my picture associated with you.
Actually describing it in more academic terms of one place as a job in another place.
I
Whoever I'm
showed
trying
like
to like.
half hour after that, I put the tracking coming for, you were doing a policy session.
Call it
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
a lot of
no,
cross-campus students are getting paid to do research, in labs.
You weren't here, I missed it, yeah.
Because they need to survive, you know, particularly in these days.
And they're being paid as knowledge creators in those places.
And besides being the numbers they are, you can like totally, I mean, if you know, if you're paying them, you know who they are, like you really know who they are.
Yeah.
So,
I'm like,
I don't see what the brouhaha would be, you know, if somebody's doing final editing, they should be doing.
You all have your slides available, or is there like 30 seconds to go?
They had a folder where yeah, and it was categorized by like Sunday. You put Sunday after the other.
No.
Oh, our side.
Yeah.
Oh,
I couldn't make it. I was trying to go something.
You could throw, we'll send them to you.
Sure.
That way.
Yeah.
Totally. Happy day here, that's the word I'm looking for.
Something like success with.
They work at a dog.
And you can send it in. Oh, here,
I gotta tell you, I'm like wanting.
No, it's.
The sad thing is
If
like,
you go downstairs, it was fine.
I don't know that I'm allowed to.
Oh, they're doing.
No matter what, everyone's
Yeah,
gonna
just go
like
downstairs.
Google you and go apply to work.
Go downstairs, get it.
You'll be like, wait, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's downstairs, so go there. The food is on the
You're
side.
trying to like vote for them.
We're going to like the top.
I was a session I wanted to see is
Here, yeah.
But
Did you put that? You can speak.
No, but it's at what, right now?
Yeah, it's lunch.
12:05.
Wait, what time is it?
12:08.
Oh, 12.
The line for food is shorter downstairs.
I guess everyone's trying to get them.
They were for yeah, those are easy.
Table
is right there for soda. I think it's the ladies.
Did you grab lunch?
No.
Speak yourself. Tell me to grab food. Okay.
I think it's still gonna be lunch when we're done. No, still the tea. This is our
Hi everyone. If you're here for the lunch talk about, what was the title of your question?
Trust the messenger. AI and information integrity on Wikipedia.
You are in the right spot. We may also add, we actually just want this to be a conversation with you all, whatever you're interested in, we want to talk about that. Costanza and I are both on the global advocacy public policy team, part of the legal department of the foundation. Our jobs are to be sort of the front lines of the legal department, out there dealing with law and policy makers, ideally before they do something stupid for Wikipedia, and to try to mitigate that as much as we can. We're also out there talking to fellow travelers in the space to try to get them to help us, sort of other nonprofits, think tanks, even other companies. So that's a bit about sort of what we do, where we sit in the foundation. I am the lead public policy specialist for North America, based in Washington, D.C. Oh, hi, I'm Stan. I should have said that to start with. Cassandra?
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so as you know, the conference has gotten a little disrupted on the first day. Stan had 2 sessions, so we're kind of merging everything together. I was supposed to talk about information integrity, how AI is used on the platform, and like what we're thinking in terms of how we develop AI. And Stan was supposed to talk about the Wikipedia test.
Yeah, and just sort of policy trends that are happening both here in the United States, but also globally. We're not an island in the policy world here. There's lots of crossover and cross-pollination.
Yeah, so these are kind of the topics that we're gonna touch upon. We're gonna make it into a conversation because it's Sunday and I think everybody's very tired, so we're just gonna make it Ask Me Anything. My name is Costanza. I lead the information integrity programs at the Wikimedia Foundation. I also work on international relations like UN, international bodies, and also relations with academia. So these are kind of my 3 buckets.
Yeah, so I guess we're open to questions about any of this stuff. If you guys have them, we will take them. Otherwise, we can ask you questions.
Should we like make it what?
It's a really small group here. If you're not opposed to me rearranging some chairs, and we can all just sit together.
Yeah, I think it's easier.
Come on.
Probably more than enough.
All right.
Yeah, it would probably have enough.
Yeah, there's only 9 of us. Okay.
Have a chair for us.
It's the same color as the carpet.
No one will know.
Oh, okay. This is better than us talking at you from the front of the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's on your mind? We can talk about AI, we can talk about law and policy that is sort of happening here in the United States, but also globally. We can talk about information integrity, formerly known as disinformation, anti-disinformation.
Yeah, talk about disinformation and information integrity, and I guess the topic of the talk was what the foundation is doing to address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as Stan was saying, like we are moving even in the definition, and we've always talked about information integrity rather than disinformation, because the way we see the issue is more about kind of like promoting the positive and the trustworthy information rather than like countering disinformation, especially disinformation in ways that this is just for how the platform works, right? Because the foundation does not work on content. We can work on actors and behaviors in some cases, but we don't work on the content. So what we try to do is support the communities, and this means different things. Like for the trust and safety team, for example, it means maybe having like task forces together in cases in which there are like elections or things like that. For the product team, it means like developing like products to spot disinformation or to spot information that is false. For our team, what we do is more focused on the policy side. So we've seen a trend in the policy development in different countries in which the legislators are developing policies meant to curb disinformation that can inadvertently, most of the times it's not like because they want to, but that it could hurt the model. Meaning, for example, legislation that asks for notice and take down requests, like immediate removal of content, or that it asks to track a lot of user data, which we don't do, or things like this. So we try to work like with, as I was saying, with international conversations with the national governments, also with academia to study how the impact of legislation is on the platform, to try and make sure that they understand the model and that the model is good. So these are some of the activities.
I can talk about that as sort of one specific example here in the United States of the kinds of thing. Maybe this is the kind of thing we're talking about. Actually, it's a law called, well, it's a bill in Congress right now called No Fakes.
No fakes?
No fakes. The intent of the bill is sort of twofold. One is to try to give people, everyone, but specifically actors, voice actors, musicians, the right to control their likeness online, right? So the sound of your voice, the way you look, and this is to counter sort of, for most people, is to counter like non-consensual deepfakes, right? For the sort of entertainment industry, is more to protect their financial interest in their likeness, because I mean this all started a couple of years ago when the movie studios started basically buying the rights to sort of, CGI through AI a person's likeness, and then not actually need them physically to do any acting, right? You can just program. And the same thing is happening in the music recording industry as well. And so there was a big fight between SAG-AFTRA and music studios. This bill was introduced in part to try to negotiate the end of that fight. That part kind of got settled, right? Like the music studios and RIAA came to terms with sort of their constituents on dealing, but the non-consensual imagery part hasn't yet been dealt with. So this is the Taylor Swift deepfakes on X, right? Amy Klobuchar has been spoofed a few times, and she's one of the co-sponsors of this bill. But so the way the bill would work is to, one, create a new form of intellectual property in your likeness. This is significant for us because of a law called Section 230, which prevents civil suits aimed at sort of the contributions of one particular, in the Wikipedia sense, one particular editor. It prevents suits against the foundation or against other editors who might have had something sort of in the realm of that piece of content, right? Someone corrected a comma splice and a allegedly defamatory sentence. The person who corrected the comma splice might also be sued for Section 230, right? But all of intellectual property is exempt from Section 230, the shield. So by creating a new form of IP, it means that claims based on that right, the foundation and editors can't use Section 230 as a shield. It also creates what Costanza mentioned as a notice and takedown system. So if someone sends to the foundation or to a commons admin a notice saying this image of me is an deepfake, please take it down, the law requires within 48 hours removal of that particular image, and also requires us to build a filter to prevent anyone from uploading that picture again. So it's not just a notice and takedown system, it's a notice and stay down system. Obviously, First Amendment problems with that, free expression things, what might be a valid claim at one point, that same image later may be notable enough to be part of the encyclopedia, right? Just as if a particular image of Donald Trump or Taylor Swift were important enough to be written about in multiple sources, in theory they could also have that image removed anywhere it existed. So that's one sort of relatively nuanced thing, right? Trying to get at really a reasonable effort, right, to try to help people remove non-consensual images of themselves from the web. I think we would all agree that that's a good idea to support, but the mechanism through which they do it can be problematic. And so this is why Costanza and I talk to lawmakers to try to say, hey, can we be exempt from this particular thing, or can we make this less bad so that we don't have to build an upload filter I would say the DSA probably has elements that are like
Yeah.
that also. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, on the
Digital
DS
Services Act, sorry, is the EU law.
The Digital Services Act, yes, it's a EU law that has particularly stringent requirements for a set of platforms that they call very large online platforms. To be a very large online platform, you have to have a certain number of users, and Wikipedia is the only nonprofit that is a very large online platform. So this creates a little bit of an issue in the sense that the regulator kind of presuppose that those very large online platforms are big tech platforms and have a certain capacity to respond. So rather than like, I think in this case it's not necessarily the legislation per se, but the capacity that they are assuming the platform having. Like for example, you know, our legal team is very, very tiny compared to any big tech platform, and so when they require assessments, it is like a very big burden on our team rather than like compared to other teams. So this type of things. So we try to talk to the commission in this case to explain like how the model works, because most of the DSA is actually focused on things that don't really apply to us, like political ads, like user data, this type of things that obviously don't really apply to us. But on the capacity side, it is very burdensome. Even though we want to have like impact assessments and those type of things, we actually were already doing even before the DSA. But the amount of time and the amount of requests and this type of things, we try to talk to them.
Yeah. Similar efforts underway in Brazil, a few other places at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we're tracking different things because really all over the world there is also now a trend on age verification that it's really concerning. It's a similar situation in which the regulator assumes the big tech model, and so they assumes that a lot of user data is extracted anyway, and so the reasoning is kind of, let's use that data for good, let's use it, you know, to protect children. But the problem is that like our position is that, you know, privacy is a fundamental right, and so we don't have that type of data. We don't extract that type of data, and we don't want to extract that type of data, so this is never going to change. And so therefore this type of legislation and, you know, regulation that requires that big amount of data to access a certain platform would make it like impossible for us to operate. Like we would have to stop operations in whatever country goes with that.
Yeah, which is what we said to the UK about a year ago when they started enacting the Online Safety Act there. It's also why we brought a legal challenge to that law over the summer. So age verification is happening everywhere. It's going to be the law in Australia. It's going to be the law in the UK. It's pretty soon going to be the law in the European Union. It is already the law in something like 20 states in the United States, including one that will go into effect on January 1st in Texas, which requires the app stores to do age verification. That might not sound too bad for us because, like, go ahead, app stores, except that law also requires app stores to send us age information about every person who downloads Wikipedia app from the app store, and then to potentially block individual users if their parent provokes consent to use Wikipedia. So it's a roundabout way of sort of imposing age verification on everyone with an app. So that's, Apple just announced last week that they do intend to comply with the law when it is in effect in January, giving notice to all the app developers on the platform. Coming 3 days later, the tech industry groups filed a lawsuit challenging the Texas law. TBD on what happens there. Yeah.
I was gonna ask questions. I mean, I've struggled with this for a number of years as somebody in the policy space. Obviously, there is some real intent that makes sense when you're thinking about a company like Meta or any other big social media company. And the answer can't be, so we should never regulate those industries because it will hurt Wikipedia. Like, how do we navigate? Because there is some real, not only need, but worthwhile intent for some. I've got lots of conflicted feelings about the age one, but other potential legislation. How, other than this is gonna hurt Wikipedia, so you shouldn't do it? Like, what are the other options? Is it somehow getting you not classified in the same way as these other like, what are some options there?
Yeah, one option. Yeah, in some cases, a carve out makes sense. We usually don't want the carve out to be like on Wikipedia exclusively, because we think it's not just our issue, but there are other platforms, right, that have similar public interest roles, and that have a similar model and that also shouldn't be impacted. And being one of the biggest ones, like, we also try to make our position kind of representative of a larger group. So in some cases, it makes sense to have a carve out, for example, for educational content. For children especially, it makes sense to have a carve out for educational content in some cases. In other cases, because I agree with you, it is really a wicked problem, because you want to regulate it in a way, but at the same time you don't want to destroy or like in our case we're never gonna like extract more data. But you also don't want the policy to incentivize platform to extract more data, which is the issue, you know, in the first place. So I think you know, anything that goes in the direction of the users having more control of the data, I think it's a positive development. And then, yeah, for this type of platforms, I would say carve-outs are unfortunately one of the only ways we can solve this. I don't know, Stan, if you have a different.
Yeah, I mean, what we try to say to policymakers is not this hurts Wikipedia, so don't do it. It is, this could hurt Wikipedia the way you're doing it, so work with us to try to find another way, right? And sometimes that means crafting an exception, sometimes that means working on the definition itself, whatever sort of how they're trying to define the regulated entities, if we can tailor that. And actually, some states, as a matter of fact, have gotten better at writing those definitions to just capture Meta and X and YouTube without capturing other sites that they're not mad at, right? And so like things are improving along that front. Not everyone has such a narrow intent, however, which is, I mean, the DSA and the OSA is less about what you do and how you do it and more about how many people see what you're doing, right? It is about reach there. But yeah, our ask to regulators is just like, talk to us before you start writing stuff down. We're pretty sure you don't mean to make things harder for Wikipedia, and so like we want to work with you to work on a solution that, you know, suits what you're trying to do without impacting what we're trying to do. And that can take a few different formats, but a lot of times it comes down to very technical legal drafting, which is boring and hard at the same time.
I'm curious if like being a nonprofit could be like the exception, because I feel like some of the issues with the other tech platforms is that they're using all our data for their corporate interests.
Totally. So, I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but going after the business model is something that we advocate for, right? Like if the sort of maximizing engagement for monetization of user data is the business model, write your definition that way, and then we will not be included, right? And that probably also tackles the root of the problem rather than the symptoms and the manifestations of that problem.
Could that backfire though? Is like OpenAI claims they're a nonprofit,
exactly.
and other companies will be like, oh, if I claim to be a nonprofit, I agree with you, but I mean, I can see how that backfires.
That's why I led with it's complicated, because of companies like OpenAI and the incentive to just say, oh, well, actually, Meta itself now is, or you know, Facebook or Instagram is actually a nonprofit operated by a for-profit company, and so they'll use nonprofit law as a loophole essentially to try to evade regulation. Yes, they will
So
do that.
complicated.
Right.
Sam, maybe it's like a great moment to bring out the Wikipedia test, right, and capture the.
Yeah, I mean, so on the advocacy team, because we have, let me rewind a little bit. When lawmakers are trying to address a problem, oftentimes that problem is brought to them by some interest group or another, right? Sometimes the lawmakers out there looking for problems to solve, but a lot of times the problems are coming in the door already. And those interest groups already have their ideas about how they want to do a thing. There'll be some sort of conversation between the proponents of whatever problem they're trying to bring a solution, and the legislator. The legislator will bring in other interested parties, try to have a conversation about what they're doing. A lot of times, all those conversations about initial approach and even drafting of legislative text happens behind closed doors and no one knows about it except for those interested groups. And so by the time legislation emerges that we could respond to, it's cooked already. And the interests that have put that forward are bought into that particular language, right? And they really don't like changes to it at that point. And so we have found a need on the advocacy team to try to insert ourselves into the legislative process much earlier than we typically have been, right? A lot of times we wait until a law has been introduced into Congress and is making its way through committee before we get involved. At that point, it's very hard to shape anything about it. You might be able to stop it altogether, but it's very hard to actually make it a better law. You would think that Congress has mechanisms for doing that. They do, but they just don't work very well. So we want like legislators to think about us when they're putting pen to paper, right? And so we have put out this thing called the Wikipedia test, which we want to be an idea, right? We want law and policymakers, other interest groups, our allies in the space to think before they write and to think, is what I'm about to do going to be bad for Wikipedia? Is it going to be harder for Wikipedia to operate? Is it going to undermine some sort of key principle that Wikipedia is based on? If so, I should reconsider my approach to that. Doesn't mean I shouldn't proceed in the direction that I'm going, but I should be careful and mindful of what I'm doing, so not to upset the one good thing that the internet has produced. Not the one good thing, but
no, I don't
one of the good things that the internet has produced, right? And so we're trying to just socialize this idea, which really is, if it breaks Wikipedia, it's probably bad policy. Please contact us to work out a solution, right? We call that the Wikipedia test. We put up a blog post. I have some cards and some stickers that has this on there if you guys want some. We, after doing this a little bit, realized that we needed to give people a little more substance than just this idea, right? And so we came up with a set of like pretty basic questions about what the impact of a legislative proposal would be for things like user privacy, for community-led decision-making, content moderation, like for decentralized control mechanisms, like is part of the model here. Because a lot of times lawmakers are not thinking about this particular model of putting something together online. They're most always thinking about the top-down, all content is governed by one policy, and that policy is enforced by, paid content moderators of some kind, right? Who are all trying to do what Meta tells them to do, right? And that for lawmakers is great because they have one touch point where they can sort of put obligations on the corporate entity. That doesn't work as well for Wikimedia Foundation and for Wikipedia because, as Sam was saying, right, and you all know, our job is not the content, right? We support the infrastructure and the people and the policy that help build that. So, yeah.
Can I add something?
Please.
So, first of all, we didn't come up with the Wikimedia test. It came from like one of our allies. it's catchy, but I really want to make clear that, like, we call it Wikipedia task because it's catchy, but we don't mean it to be only Wikipedia, right? Like, we just think Wikipedia represents a certain vision of the internet that respects, like, human rights online and privacy, a certain vision of copyright, a certain vision of data minimization, like non-user data extraction, a certain way of community-led model that treats also content and information in a certain way. So it is just a like catch-all kind of thing, but it's by no means meant to only protect Wikipedia. It's just Wikipedia is like maybe the most known example or one of the most known examples of a certain vision of platforms.
But OpenStreetMap, Project Gutenberg, Global Voices, a bunch of the
Internet
Archive, like parts of the free and open source software communities,
Yeah.
right? Like these kinds of things are also what we're trying to represent with the Wikipedia test. We would love other examples from any of you. You may contribute to one or more of these spaces, and so like we've been trying to compile a much larger list of like who's in this space with us. And so if you have thoughts that we might not have represented, please let us know.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, but is there any synergy with NPR, like, I know Catherine's there, and I've seen her, like, have to go before Congress, and they're, like, not to get political, but they're, like attacking the neutrality of, but NPR and Wikipedia.
Yeah,
so
that's such a great question.
That's a great
because,
question.
Yeah.
Please.
This is a great question. So I think, especially maybe to go back to the topic that was AI, especially in this moment, I think we have a lot of interest alignment with media organizations, especially public interest media organizations, because Wikipedia is content, but also a source of training data for the LLMs. And as you might have heard, we have seen a huge spike in crawlers traffic since the beginning of the year, which is extremely costly on the servers. And this is something that also this companies have seen, and other public interest media organizations, but also the UN, government websites, like a lot of public information infrastructure is being burdened.
And it's also being attacked,
And it's being attacked, exactly. So we definitely have a lot in common there, and I think also been thinking more and more, like, besides Wikipedia, but really at a societal level, how do we solve for this issue where we have basically public interest information subsidizing a whole industry that is building off of the content, which, on one side we do want to offer because our whole point is open knowledge, but at the same time the cost could make it impossible for us to operate.
Yeah, but we're also being attacked for being like accused of being not neutral, like they're just afraid of it, like information is out there, but it's like concerned, and then maybe they'll attack the non-profit status that the foundation has, or like maybe what are we doing on that,
Unfortunately, there's not much to do to counter that. Current nonprofit law in the United States, in theory, makes it pretty tough to challenge someone's nonprofit status. The main hook, I think, there is either non-compliance with your sort of obligations as a nonprofit entity, right? Like if NPR or Wikimedia are engaging in partisan advocacy, that's a no-no, right? No, neither party is doing that right now, right? But like that's
what
one
they
way.
say. It's misinformation, but that's what they're saying.
The other way is a scarier and quicker route, which is to essentially like lodge allegations of supporting terrorist activity as a reason to go after nonprofit status. Those attacks are definitely being queued up against
They're saying
anything
Antifa is a terrorist.
Correct, which is also not a real organization, and so it makes this very broad net that can sort of be applied selectively.
Very easy to label.
Right. This is actually, I think, the most recent development in the sort of what I've been calling the global war on facts.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, at the same time, we have like this international structure of, I mean, chapters in different countries. So, I mean, I know all the fundraising with, like, I mean, exception of Germany, all goes through the foundation. But if there's a way, like, I don't know, to use this global structure to I don't know, be more decentralized and protected.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's probably super complicated.
It is complicated, and the more complicated part is, I think, even if the foundation were to relocate or were to.
I mean, just like
decentralize
have the
somewhat,
chapters more like I don't know.
to continue operating in the United States, like to be available in the United States in many ways makes us subject to United States law anyway. And so there's not really a place to go
Unless we want to
unless
cut
we're
out.
leaving Earth.
Do the Binance thing of not existing anywhere.
I mean,
worked for a while.
Yeah, I mean that was sort of the initial state of Wikipedia anyway, right? Was that kind of, and I don't know what the decentralized web technologies offer there. I mean, I think that
Still
probably
have
is the
servers.
long-term backup plan for if everything goes wrong. But I don't know what that means in terms of scale and how global operations work.
But in terms of like the fundraising, it's like I know the German chapter funds for Germany, and like I think they do send money to the foundation and then they get something back. But if there's a way to keep some of the money, like I don't know, like Europe, like the chapters and like they can fund stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the funding would be technically possible. I think the problem is more that the foundation has both the legal responsibility.
Yeah,
and also the
definitely.
servers are an issue.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they are mainly in the US.
It's a shame we put so much work into trying to split that up and then it went nowhere. Because now we're facing exactly what we were trying to do that for. But maybe it's not too late to roll back the clock on movement strategy, but that's out of scope here.
From the perspective I have, you and your teams are doing a terrific job being upfront and being proactive, on things like the tax exemption. The foundation is all over it in terms of getting good advice and thinking about how to be proactive, answering the legislative request, responding to tech queries, all of those things. There's a lot of activity going on by some really professional, thoughtful.
Yeah, and that's all part of the same sort of attack and response equation, right? And so we are, I guess, to generally categorize our sort of response stance here, like we are responding in good faith as a responsible actor and being very wiki about everything, right? Like, if any challenge to Wikipedia results in just like explaining how things work, right? That's been our approach so far.
Everything is transparent.
Yep.
I think we have.
I was just wondering if you foresee any kind of areas where we can be more proactive with kind of going on the offensive to positively establish like some increased sort of ability to maneuver and rights and things like that we haven't before. Are there any sort of possibilities for more firmly establishing, for example, like kind of putting fair use more into our wheelhouse of like we're going to be more strident about pushing the limits of it or anything like that? Like how can we turn back the tide in broad strokes?
Yeah, I mean, one way we do this is to engage with like this multi-stakeholder, multilateral, and global discussions. And so there was one last year at the UN, the Global Digital Compact. There's one this year on the World Summit of Information Society. These are like big agreements on how to regulate just like global digital governance. I know that sometimes it sounds very removed and something that doesn't have like an immediate impact, but in reality, the World Summit on Information Society, for example, is what created the possibility for the internet to be really multi-stakeholder. And there are, at this point in time, many states that are trying to move towards a multilateral model, meaning only governments have control, which could create, you know, the splinternet and things like that. And so I think it's important that like we bring this kind of model and this vision at that level, and it's also a way in which we can kind of optimize and like reaching many stakeholders at the same time and many states also at the same time.
And through those venues and others, our team has developed our sort of, we call it our positive vision for the internet, right? Like what we want the internet to be, and we're trying to get law and policymakers to also see things through that lens rather than sort of stamping out the bad things that they don't want, trying to foster an environment that you know builds more things like Wikipedia, right? To try to bring a like let's lift the conversation up a little bit. Mixed results on receptions to that. Lawmakers like to go after a bad guy. So if you have ideas of who the bad guy should be other than obvious targets, yeah, please bring those to us also.
Yeah, thanks. So, well, and that's kind of going in the direction I wanted to ask, because with what's going on with AI and you know, I work with multiple media organizations for my Trust project, and so what would the vision be? Like, what would the outcome be that you'd like to see around the regulation? Is it regulation? Is it some other, you know, is it contracts with the technology companies? What would it look like for media companies and media to get prepared to these companies that are basically setting up all that?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't think we are at the point yet where we have developed a concrete policy. We've been having discussions for many months. It's not an easy problem to solve because like I think the principle is as a society we want information that is trustworthy and we want public information and public interest information to be available to people. Like this is kind of the principle. The issue we are having is, as I said before, now the public interest information is kind of subsidizing this for-profit, very extractive model. How do we solve for that? Some people would solve for that saying, oh, it's the governments, it's the public that has to pay for it. Some people would say, no, it's the companies that are using this infrastructure that should pay for it. We've had a lot of this conversation in like international forums, both like inside the Wikimedia movement and also like at international level, and I found that it's very difficult to find that agreement because like for example like in this country and other countries like this, the idea that the government should pay for this sounds like really a no-go, while for example Europeans have more like a tendency to say, okay, yes, this is a public interest thing, it should be subsidized this way. In other cases for us, like how we're trying to solve it right now, like in this moment, is through Wikimedia Enterprise. So having Wikimedia Enterprise have agreements with particular companies that are using it. But we do think that it needs a more like whole of society solution rather than just like, this is maybe something we can solve for, but it's like, I think it's a temporary solution or something that only works for us.
Yeah.
It's part of the solution, but not the final.
I mean, we're, essentially what we are saying to what we refer to as the commercial reusers of content, right? Which encompasses AI companies, but also Google and others. We try to make the business case to them as to why they should invest in the sustainability of Wikipedia and journalism generally, right? Which, in a nutshell is they need this stuff. They need it now and they will continue to need it. And if they don't do some sort of sustenance, right, some sort of sustaining investment there, the reserves from which they are drawing will dry up, and then they won't have a product that anybody wants either. So that's the gist of the case that we're trying to make here. Moderate success, right? I mean, this is kind of resonating, and we're trying to go even further to try to get them to do things like improving the mechanisms for attribution and linking back, which is a work in progress with the AI companies, to be honest, right? Like they're not necessarily incentivized to do it, but it's also a technically difficult problem to solve. But I think they're also working on that. I think Google in particular is seeing the long-term impacts here, because they've been in the space longer than most of the other companies, right? And they actually do have a longer view of like what survival here looks like for them, for the other companies. And so I think I am hopeful, and what I think we'll start to see is, again, I hope the like chatbot hype explodes into nothingness in the near future. We go back to a world where it's like, actually, we just wanted the search thing that we used to have, right? Like, I see it. It's like how I feel, but like I read the comment sections, right? It's like how a lot of people feel out there, right? But it doesn't mean that. So eventually, maybe one company will like give us that choice again. And we'll be like, yes, thank you. This is the thing we never wanted you to move away from in the first place, right?
Like when before Google, there was like,
quick announcement, group photo in 5 minutes downstairs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. But like the Yahoo, where it was like more a hand maintained a directory of like you can go find stuff, and it wasn't like like I don't know this algorithm, and like I don't know that exists anymore. Like, but
I mean, discoverability.
It was like the Wikipedia type thing, but for like finding like sites. Like.
Yep. It's a really tough balance to strike between like you go too far towards curation and you get a walled garden, right? You don't do enough curation and then discoverability becomes impossible. In between those two things is some range of like helping users actually find stuff they want. And I think there's a big fight about what that looks like right now, right? I mean, the AI companies are just trying stuff for various reasons. Google is trying to maintain its own position. Other interlopers are trying various things too, and so I think we're going to see a redefinition of what that solution space looks like. I think there will be quite a few more walled gardens that result at the end of that. Some will opt for the other end, where it's just like stuff's just out there. Good luck, you know. But then there will be some new ideas for what the search interface looks like. I don't know what it's going to be, but I don't think it's Anthropic. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, and as you were saying, for like, I think maybe nerdier conversation.
Yep.
You might already have these people on your like list of other people you want to include in the wiki tests and stuff like that. But programs like From the Page, which is, and that's just the one that I'm familiar with. I'm sure there are other ones out there, but they're along the lines of what Library of Congress and National Archives do. They're like citizen archivist program. They're a program that other smaller institutions can upload photos and text documents, and people can transcribe them online. And they were hit by bots and crawlers earlier this year at some point, and they had trouble getting their page back up because they were over inundated. Talking about the crawlers, but also those, it's another citizen contribution kind of location where, and cultural institutions have unique items that can also be that like borderline questionable, but it's like, but this is the historic document. We're not saying whether something's right or wrong. This is just the contract document. So and so I mean, I know Library of Congress has a similar program, and National Archives has the Citizen Archivist program, but then there's smaller entities like From the Page is the one that I know of.
Okay, thank you. No, I was not familiar with this.
Google is so huge and disjointed there.
Right, it's got my last comment,
they have a hard
very
time keeping track of
frustrating, but.
themselves, you know.
I was just thinking, every time
guys
the same
realize
people,
fundamentally
and they've
how
changed for us.
many people don't
The guy
understand
I
how
talked to
Wikipedia works?
was
And what I mean by that, I mean very smart people. I include myself in this. Like,
Yes, yeah.
what they did. I will tell you
People decided,
fundamentally.
so, cause I was thinking we could support you on the, like, on the links stuff, like trying to promote that, if we knew more,
They
like.
truly believe it, and they cannot understand why it's not something you guys take care of. And they truly believe that there is some centralized content moderation, like, thing happening, and you guys have to figure out.
Yeah.
Because fundamentally people don't, I didn't understand it very recently. Which maybe you could say.
Right, yeah, cause we were
bad
talking
on
about
me,
like
but
making
still.
distribution period, we have our own, we also have some files for attribution, but we're not for them, it's for
I came as a information researcher and I came in saying, okay, we saw this, like this way, then this we can do, this we cannot do, this is not because of the model.
Right, yeah, they
It's also
do
very
all that,
frustrating.
yeah.
From, I understand it's very frustrating also from the regulator.
Right.
It's like, spend so many years trying to understand the issue.
And for the people who are impacted by things. Like, I just,
Yes, yeah.
I cannot get mad at my friends who hate Wikipedia because they.
Right, exactly, not just the,
Like,
PIA.
I know it's a stupid broad
Right.
statement.
Yeah,
We
well,
both know why it's
yeah,
wrong.
so however we can
And yet,
help, like, one
I
is just to
can't tell
know
my
what it
friends
is
what
you're
they're
asking.
feeling is wrong. If that
We
makes sense.
haven't, maybe because I haven't really found the right touch point for that, like Arun is more, actually more.
I just think people need that to better understand. I think they think there is some centralized decision making,
research.
right? Like, and using words that nobody outside of this community knows, even using the word decentralized means nothing outside the tech community, right?
I
think it's
know, I only
wrong.
figured that, I mean, we've been working with.
So much of the jargon and language is so obvious to all of you guys, but is not translated. Even just the other day, a few friends knew I was here, and they were like, what the fuck were you doing there? Like, they're terrible, here's why. These are
Okay,
very
yeah.
smart and good friends of mine.
I mean,
And they will all have their example, and they
you know,
will
I
all
knew
show me the
Richard
page
Chambers
that I
really
agree with.
well.
I cannot believe this page is still up. But they don't understand why they're like, I've flagged this multiple times, no one will take it down, fuck that organization. Because they don't understand, like,
Or if I look at.
and I can't tell
And then
them
the
not
other guy,
wrong
and they also
for feeling
switch
that.
people.
It's, I don't know how to solve that, but
That's
people
it.
don't.
I think it's a matter of policy, not on everything. And then our other program manager just left.
One of the things we have to
Oh, Van Karmatama. Okay, and he is, oh, research and.
I mean, on that, I
emerging
also
voices.
very much,
You do the password?
Run commercials.
I do. It is, oh, that's easy. Wiki was good security.
I know, but I was just like, that to me is actually not the actual problem of how to solve that problem. It's how do you solve the problem that most people.
Although they didn't, it's irritating.
It actually opens up threads in Instagram. Did your talk start at 1? Is this supposed to be 1? I don't know.
Oh. This is 105 to 115.
So so this is the last block of the day. So my assumption is that because we have a group photo, it's okay if we push it to start by a little bit. Is that mistaken in that?
We just finished the group photo. People are just coming up, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be kind of silly to start it right now. So
Yeah. You give a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Are we streaming? I hit start just because I don't know where the volunteer is.
We'll wait, I guess.
I feel like live tweeting city council meetings does work pretty well because it just helps you cope with how boring city council meetings are. Tried doing that with ARBCom meetings before, but I got pulled off pretty quickly.
What did you try to do?
Do that with ARBCom meetings.
Do what?
Live tweet.
That's fun. I like that idea.
Are we streaming this mic? Yes, looks like this mic.
No, that mic was off.
This must be this microphone right there. Testing this mic there that's in the room.
All right, I mean, should we wait more or should we start?
I was gonna say let's start at 1:10. I'm gonna wait.
Okay. Hey, live streamers. We're starting 10 minutes late because the group photo was added.
5 minutes late.
5 minutes late. A little late. We'll be with you shortly. A couple minutes.
Yes, we do love it.
Are you doing the Jeopardy thing?
No,
that's a reserved memory. We should do ARBCom Kahoot. That would be a fun thing for like the new arts.
Night, WikiConference 2026.
Andy actually did a Wikipedia themed Kahoot at our last Toronto meeting.
What is Kahoot?
Yeah.
What is Kahoot?
It's like a quiz thing.
It's an online platform where like everyone pulls it up on their phone, the quiz questions on the screen, and you have to tap the answer on your phone.
I won it.
And the competition, like whoever gets the most of them right, like shows that on the leaderboard.
It's pretty popular in both classrooms and student clubs.
Sounds conducive to phone cheating.
They're generally
timing
fast
is
enough
too
questions,
stressful.
you can't Google them.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, it was all the rage in high school. It was like the fun teachers always did them.
Buddy, we gotta make ARBCom Kahoot now. That will be WikiCon 2026.
All of the answers are just redacted, redacted, redacted.
I'm gonna go with C, redacted.
Incorrect. It was D, redacted. We're blocking you for redacted. I'm the timekeeper. Let me.
Hey everyone, I think we're gonna get started now. I have for you a tidy little morsel of a conference presentation. It is the first little hook of what I hope will be a larger project, or will be a larger project. Yeah, I pitched it as lightning talk. They urged me to extend it by a little bit. Here we are. So, Wikipedia. So for a lot of young people especially, I think Wikipedia has become synonymous with the idea of an encyclopedia. The print encyclopedias, a few of them might exist, mostly on dusty library shelves. They're not really used very more. Sometimes specialist encyclopedias come out. Most people don't read those. I know that from having contributed to a few of them. But yeah, it hasn't always been that way. Wikipedia has not always been the default encyclopedia. Early coverage of Wikipedia tended to compare it to the classics in the genre, Encyclopedia Britannica, the Encyclopedia of Diderot and D'Alembert in France, Pliny the Elder's Natural History, and indeed, early scholarship of Wikipedia compared it to other encyclopedias. It was a novel thing. But of course, there are a lot of differences. I don't really need to go into much detail here about what the differences are. It's not paper, it is editable by anyone, of course. It's online, it's accessible by anyone with an internet connection for free. And those are the ones that get all the attention. But I would argue that the most important difference between Wikipedia and past encyclopedias is that it doesn't need anybody's permission to publish. So fundamentally, literacy and books have been scarce commodities. They've been kind of only controlled in the history of books, that is. There have been scarce commodities. They are expensive to produce, they're expensive to disseminate, and you typically needed some help if you wanted to make a book as large as an encyclopedia. And because people in power have known for a very, very long time that power has a close connection with knowledge and that controlling knowledge is a way to maintain or gain power, that help typically comes at a cost. So you typically need support by a ruler, by a church, by a financier of some sort, and it's rarely for the sake of a public good. So the oldest extant encyclopedia that we have, or one of the oldest, that because it's hard to draw lines around the genre, was Pliny the Elder's Natural History. So it was influential for more than 1,000 years, not because it was the most factual, amazing thing. Even 1,000 years later, he had a reputation for being kind of gullible. He included everything that you could possibly find in this work. It's a compilation of everything you could find. Unicorns were real. It's probably why we think ostriches stick their head in the sand. That myth is popularized by him, spread for more than 1,000 years. No, it was successful because of this guy. That's Titus. That's the Caesar at the time. Pliny the Elder was his teacher and had a great relationship with him. And it was because of his relationship with him that it was able to get created at all. The Roman Empire brought all these materials back from foreign lands that were conquered back to Pliny to be able to compile them into his encyclopedia. And in turn, Pliny the Elder gave them this gem of a tool that they could use to show off the wealth of knowledge possessed by the Roman Empire, even use it as a work of apologetics to newly conquered peoples. So look at what a great culture you're coming into, one which has embraced all of these other cultures. Only authorized knowledge had any real chance of being read by anyone. This is true into the Middle Ages as a new institution came out that had control over all the writing resources. This was the church, at least in Europe. And people wrote, these priests, monks, etc., wrote encyclopedias for priests, by priests, for teaching, for education, for spiritual education, for conversion, for the newly converted. They were all, of course, in line with doctrine. They were religious encyclopedias that had, in the tradition of scholasticism, that had tried to bring in some science and describe the natural world in a religious way. A lot of people know this. I had to include this. This is just a weird little GIF that's been on Commons forever of Dennis Diderot flashing colors for some reason. So this was famous both for a lot of reasons, for being emblematic of the Enlightenment, for possibly playing a role in the French Revolution, but also for the conflicts between its editors, writers, and everybody in power. They had conflicts with the state, they had conflicts with the church, they had conflicts with their publishers. They were jailed multiple times because they were not towing the line. But Diderot found lots of creative ways to take little jabs by using the effectively see also sections to link Catholicism and madness, just little subtle things like that. And then he would, in little entries that nobody would read, I'm just gonna breeze through this. Basically, this is an article, a full article about a plant, and it's him ranting about why would anybody ever want to read his effectively stub. Like, we don't know anything about this, but consumers apparently want it, so I have to give it to you. So he would hide stuff like this. But he still got in trouble all the time. He needed permission to publish. Britannica went the other way. Britannica fawned over King George III, and Britannica was, they positioned themselves as the anti-Diderot. They wanted to be the conservative, moral, ethical, the picture of British excellence and conservatism, and it was very much, it was never an official encyclopedia of Britain, but it was very much a pro-British, and even sought the official endorsement of the king. Great Soviet Encyclopedia was perhaps the best known example of the trend of state encyclopedias in the 20th century, which often veered into propaganda. It was very dangerous to work at this encyclopedia. Lots of them were jailed and possibly executed for not faithfully extolling the virtues of the system and the party. So I'm just about at time, but this is just like a greatest hits. I'm talking about all the famous encyclopedias. There are a lot more than that, but what almost all of them have in common is they needed someone's permission. So this was true into the internet era, and then the cost to distribute plummeted as computers proliferated, and then the possibility of crowdsourcing emerged. And then a free public resource was established which took advantage of both of those things. And so it was that we can publish an encyclopedia without having to ask an emperor, without having to ask financiers, without having to ask the church. And because Wikipedia wasn't required to go to power for permission, now we're in the era of power has come to Wikipedia. And that's it.
We've got just a minute for questions if anyone's got one.
Not really a question, but a comment. I'm going to do that one slide with the guy complaining about the plants.
Yeah.
Upload it to Common and call it Ancient Guy Complains About Stubs.
Yep, you should do that.
You should totally
It's
do
already in the article. I added it some years ago when I was working on my dissertation and came across it.
I'm kind of curious, and this is probably too long a question for this, but as a follow-up talk sometime in the future, the history of other times when encyclopedias have interacted with power in that way. Like, I'd love to hear more about, as much as we know about the folks who worked on the Russian encyclopedia, and, you know, why didn't King George endorse Britannica, right? Did he actually read it and find some things he didn't like, right? Like, you know.
Yeah, I guess I would reference my not amazing, but very long dissertation, which is a history of the cultivation of encyclopedic authority, which veers into the ways in which the authority is not necessarily objective and, you know, comprehensive and all that stuff. The way that there are choices and relationships of power behind the scenes.
Are there any lessons for us?
Oh boy, any lessons? I would say that the lesson that I wanted to get across with this is that that should be what we talk about as the most important thing about this project. That's what makes it special.
Okay, that's all the time we have. But everyone give a hand for Rhododendrite.
That's the lesson. Hide our criticism.
everybody. Welcome to our session on Wiki Game Jam 2025. We just changed it a few hours ago. I'm Kevin Piravi, and this is Jennifer Lee, and we're going to do a recap of this event that happened in Brooklyn just a few weeks ago. So Wikipedia has had a very long history of wiki games. There's the classic wiki racing, where people race to get from one article to another as quickly or as shortly as possible. There's catfishing, which might be the first online wiki game, I believe, around 2006 or so. That's where you have to guess an article based on its categories. There's Redacto, there's Wiki Asteroids that I created, and many more. So there's been a lot of energy in this space, especially from the volunteer community working on these games over the years. And we wanted to further tap into that energy and see how we can reach new audiences. A few weeks ago, I launched a website, playwiki.games, that kind of catalogs existing wiki games that are out there. There's a fun little arcade interface I made on that website, so feel free to check that out. But anyway, the foundation approached us and we discussed the possibility of a Wiki Game Jam, which is basically a hackathon based around developing wiki games. So the first one was hosted October 3rd through 5th at Hex House over in Brooklyn. It's a very cool makerspace. And it's so cool that their address isn't on Google Maps, and you just kind of gotta know where it is. So Wikimedia Foundation gave funding. It was organized by myself and Jenny through WikiHouse. We were sponsored by Wikimedia New York City, Jam City, and AfroCrowd. And what was cool about the event is there were some Wikimedians there, but I think it was majority, or at least a very large amount of participants, were non-Wiki game developers. They heard about the event mostly through Hex House's network, and they were excited to come learn about how to use Wikimedia's APIs and develop wiki games for the first time. We had over 70 participants check in and 28 resulting projects. Our website is wikigamejam.org, and you can see the New York City page in particular, /New York City 2025. Let's see. I just want to show off this cool animation we had before the event. Shout out to our graphic designer, Sarah, I think. This was the event. Very cool kind of makerspace with various studio spaces. These are a bunch of people hacking away. We had a whole slew of speakers who kind of talked about their game development experience and how to develop with Wiki. Here's one of the speakers speaking. Some hackers hacking. And yeah, the future. So like I said, this event just happened. We're now kind of planning for what we're going to see next. We think it was a great success. We had 27 great projects come out of it, most of which you can actually play online today. We want to host more events in more locations. We're talking to the Bay Area user group to host an event in San Francisco. They're actually very interested in physical games, so they want to like board games, card games, etc. And we really want to tap into the existing communities of non-wiki game developers, right? Because there's huge communities of game developers here in New York City, LA, San Francisco, etc. And they're nerds. They get excited by the idea of making games powered by Wikipedia. And it's just going to turn it a way to consume free knowledge in engaging ways. There's concern in our community about younger generations not using Wikipedia as much as they're using TikTok, as they're using other ways to consume knowledge. So games can be an effective way to kind of increase the Wikipedia brand recognition with younger populations. And I'm just going to show our websites.
I have t-shirts, actually that's the main thing. I have, and there's silk screen in the back, like if I open the dark.
Hey Kevin.
Yes.
Where can we learn about more of these events?
Interesting. We should have a mailing list. We are posting wikigamejam.org. We're kind of going to catalog upcoming events on this page. We'll also probably put on MetaWiki. Yeah.
Busted.
Oh yes, yeah. I think SJ is the one kind of speaker.
Random drove down from Boston to the Wiki Game Jam New York. Was like, I want to bring this to Boston.
Or to come.
Yes, no, the way to. So we have been puzzling this out. The way to sort of stay in touch is there's literally a ticket type that's like, I can't come, but keep in touch. So I think I would just turn that ticket thing back on, and that's how we're going to build the email list. So you had 70 people show up, but we probably had 130 people RSVP. So it's the beginning of a decent mailing list. And it was really fun. Also, like more than half female developers, I would say, or more than half female and hackers. Some of them were designers and all of that. So I would say that the demographic mix of this particular Wiki Game Jam was not a typical Wikimedia hackathon demographic mix. Yes. And then, does anyone want t-shirts? We have, okay, so.
And stickers.
And stickers.
Kate, you have
okay.
question?
They only come in L and M, I'm sorry. No, but it's okay. I think, no, I know.
I mean, a free shirt is a free shirt.
We'll try.
We'll make do.
Kate?
Yeah, question is, can we make this a recurring event in New York City? Like maybe every 2-3 months? Because it's always like disappointing. I meet the people who we like worked with and then never see them again and they'll drop off. But if we create a way where they can stay engaged, like I think that would be valuable.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we can work with Wikimedia New York City to make this recurring. Like we had that play night.
Yeah, it can be a prime produce or whatever, but I know the people I was working with would be happy to stay involved, but like there needs to be like a space for that.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And Boston has a big interactive fiction community, and I don't know exactly how that would interact with Wikipedia, but I'd love to find out.
I like that. Is that Kunal back there?
Yeah. Were there any, like, are all these games open source, or was there anything around that?
Majority of them are open source.
They're super awesome. They're actually really, I mean, vibe coding has totally changed what you can do. I would say, like they're like legit playable games. And then we had a reception on Friday night where you could come and you could just play. And some of them are actually like the gallery, no, it's not the gallery wall. The one with the posing is really good as a. If you ever want an interactive wiki game at a party you throw, it's really fun because basically she'll show you have to kind of match. Yeah. And so it's really fun if you have it projected on a wall.
Step back a little more.
Thank you. And those images are obviously pulled from comments. The other thing that I'll
That's attribution.
That's great.
make a the other thing that I'll make a pitch for is this guy. He actually didn't. He just showed up at the second event. He just showed up at the second event, not the first event. But there's this whole little community of people who buy like receipt printers, and he had configured it so that it would take a Wikipedia article of your choice and then like reconfigure it into like an article that you can print with all the photos. It's really cool. So this is mine. This is AI Slop, which is an article that I started as Slop (parentheses artificial intelligence). And I think I know that Wikimedia New York has been looking for a kiosk kind of concept for the library, and I feel like there's something here. And all kinds of interactivities. So the games are good not only as sort of like sit at your laptop and play, but as ways to have like public engagement.
Question back there?
Yeah, I was curious about what you said about partnerships and.
Can you repeat?
Yeah, I was curious about what you said about partnerships and like trying to engage younger people since the model of consuming information has changed. I've noticed that with TikTok, it's becoming more popular because people want more of a connection first, and I'm seeing that through like the games you've built. But I'm curious, like, what are the conversations like about maybe partnering with TikTok or like building more connection-based opportunities to experience Wikipedia? Or have you guys thought about doing the receipt thing and partnering with CBS?
Oh, that's yeah, this just happened on Friday night. So I was thinking this would be fun at edit right? Like people working articles, they can like print like a diff of their articles before and after.
Yeah.
I know the foundation's been exploring producing content for TikTok, doing interviews with editors, which is pretty exciting to see.
Oh yeah, that's right. They sent their first short form video editor comp or something, and so there's a whole team there. And I think they originally were only going to do like videos about the game jam, but then they met all these really deep, quirky characters, of which the Wikimedia world is endlessly full of. And so they did a lot of interviews about what your favorite or what is an interesting article that you did, and so is it
Adam Harrison?
Oh, there he is. There's a TikTok on him that does better, like that basically is 3x the average of any other Wikimedia Foundation TikTok video about him doing the oatmeal raisin article, oatmeal raisin cookie article way back when. And I do think that, so personally, personally speaking, I do think that the sort of TikTok strategy is better pushed out into the community rather than being centralized in the at the foundation. And I think, at least the video editor I was talking to was trying to figure out, well, how would you do that? Like, how do you get more depths of Wikipedia and Annie out there? And I don't know that is possible necessarily, but I think the it is something that could be productive as a way to engage younger people.
Hannah?
I think there's really a demand out there for sort of educational content that is engaging, and I think it's great that you've done this. But how what's your plan for increasing its visibility so it doesn't just fall into a void and someone has to try and really find out that this even exists?
Sorry, the game jam or the games?
Yeah, just the fact that these games exist.
Yeah, no, I think we can definitely do better as a community to kind of showcase them, and that's kind of why I made PlayWiki.games, which is supposed to be kind of this generic, easily accessible to anyone directory of wiki games, both from the game jam and before. So I added tags. You can find trivia, puzzle. Oh yeah, and then I made that's the fancy arcade mode I talked about. Scroll through the games.
But has it been posted for social media on official channels or anything?
Not yet, no. This is
Okay.
I've been working on this, but yeah, I'd like to get it busted out there.
I will also say, we definitely have generous resources to actually do the event, but then to do comms well or community kind of publicity well, you need sort of more resources, and I think that is something that we could maybe coordinate with the foundation on, since they have a stronger comms team than us. So part of it is you need to kind of develop a channel that kind of is regular, and there's some kind of debate, whether or not that is something worth investing in terms of ROI with all the other competing ROIs that the foundation has developed. Yes, I have 3 more shirts. Oh, and Sherry was there too. Hey.
I got the wrong shirt.
PlayWiki.games, which is.
Thank you.
To the end.
Yeah, I saw that. I should get.
Missed it though.
I'll talk to Ray.
Missed it.
Well, I saw Ray.
You do it. Yeah, Kevin. Kevin, you're the greatest. You're fantastic. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. We're such a fan. So hard.
Very loving heckling.
Pretty much.
Never change.
I could do anything.
Oh yeah. No.
The interview they did with me, and how and why I did not write the biography of Alice Paul.
Oh, well, I'm trying to get a typo fixed.
I thought that would be kind of like
Yes.
Yep, is this working? Okay, we are a little behind schedule and there's a bunch to talk about. So I'm just gonna jump in and get started. Welcome to the session on the board elections. I guess 2 kind of disclaimers before I begin. First, we did this proposal 3 or 4 months ago, and a lot has happened with the board elections that was unanticipated. So I've done a bunch of restructuring in the last 2 weeks so that we can have as much discussion and conversation as possible. What I plan to do is quickly give you some context on who I am, who the elections committee is, review the process as it currently stands for the community elections, and then open it up to as much discussion about this recent election and the process as we can. I can't guarantee that I can answer every question like satisfactorily. We do have Kathy from the Board of Trustees is going to be in the audience, and I might float or bounce. Oh, and Mary, perfect. So I might bounce some questions to them because, as you'll see when we talk about what the Elections Committee is, there is a big difference between us and the actual Board of Trustees. And then I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm Thaddeus. I have been editing Wikipedia like over half my life, I think since I was 11. Not like, I mean, better than other things I could have been doing at 11, I guess. I'm an administrator on the English Wikipedia. I'm on the Elections Committee. And in my day job, I teach middle school and high school speech and debate.
Teachers!
Woo! What is the Elections Committee? So, a little bit of context here. This is the boilerplate text. The platonic ideal of the Elections Committee is that we oversee elections to the community allocated seats on the board in accordance with the bylaws. Final authority over a lot of things in the elections rests with the Board of Trustees. The Elections Committee is meant to function as liaison between the community and the board itself. And so a few things that we don't do. The Elections Committee doesn't do any kind of like recruitment or seeking out for candidates. We put out the call on Meta several months before an election, and we're not like seeking people out. The Elections Committee doesn't set up rules to try to like prevent discussion, hide results. And then the Elections Committee doesn't have final say over candidate eligibility or making it onto the ballot. And that's a really important thing I want to reiterate. I think we've made like a couple statements on Meta about where EC authority is. That's a really big one. The EC does not remove candidates from the ballot, anything like that. That is Board of Trustees power. So what does the Elections Committee do? The Elections Committee first assists the board and staff in creating a timeline, basic eligibility rules, and communications about the community elections. We function sort of as a go-between for WMF staff and the board and the broader community about the elections process. There is a top page on Meta. There's a mailing list that is often like an easier way to reach us. That email's on Meta as well. And then we, during the election, enforce things like the campaigning rules, voting rules, and then audit and announce the election results at the end of the cycle. And so what is the actual elections process? I think the biggest thing that's been floating around this cycle had to do with the removal of 2 candidates from the ballot. And I want to put something out that maybe has not been communicated clearly in the past or with past elections. The community elections to the board, to the best of my understanding, have always functioned as advisory elections. And it's in the bylaws. I think it's section, or like Article 4, Section 3 talks about those community seats and specifies that the Board of Trustees is going to do the final appointment based on a set of like criteria, including diversity and inclusion, fiduciary duties. What else in my notes? Like board members can't be like current or recently former WMF employees. There's some specific things in the bylaws there. And then something the bylaws are not as specific on is what the community advisory process should actually look like. So the bylaws only say, well, we need to have a community process to try to find out who's going to fill these seats. And I think that lack of specificity has led to a lot of confusion, especially this last cycle. So what does the process as it currently stands look like? The most foundational part is the candidate applications, which typically open several months before the election. And at this stage, they're open to anybody. And the Elections Committee places very, very basic eligibility criteria here. So the very basic eligibility is something the EC has control over. The criteria this year are largely similar to previous years. Fluency in English, as that's what the board conducts business in. Significant experience with Wikimedia movement building or movement building writ large. previous experience on boards or committees, preferably of a scale as the WMF, and the ability to pass a background check and specifically like reveal your real identity, right? You can't be anonymous and be a board member. Those were the basic eligibility requirements. Once that cycle's done, the EC does a super quick, like 1 week check for each candidate, making sure we fulfill those. Typically, 3 or 4 people are eliminated because either they won't like reveal their identity, or they just like clearly do not have experience with either Wikipedia or any kind of like movement building. We are aware that these criteria are subjective, and so when we did the audit this year, we erred on the side of caution. Every edge case, we're saying, okay, we'll push them through to the next stage. The next stage is the shortlisting process. My understanding is that this has been talked about in previous years, but this may be the first year the process was actually implemented. The idea here is that we want to make the ballot more manageable. It's harder to make an informed decision if you have an overwhelming number of candidates. So the process that happened this year, and this is something we can discuss when we get to the section, was to push a ballot to affiliates and have them act as middlemen. So every active affiliate was able to designate their top 6 choices to the elections committee. Those were then tallied, and the top 6 overall advanced to the final ballot. The big process change this year was the final eligibility checks done by the Board of Trustees, so that is the full vetting, was moved to right after the shortlisting process, before the ballot opened. And so what does that actually look like? That's a very intensive process done by the board. I'm not on the board. I can't give you like super specific information here, but it's background check, media check, reference interviews. I think there's an interview with board members, the governance committee. It's different from like giving your social security number to do a background check for like a regular job. It's a very expensive and kind of like multi-stage process that is very typical for a board of this level. I think it's important to keep in mind that the like WMF board has fiduciary duties, authority over a like $250 million yearly budget. It's a very large amount of money, and so that's why those final eligibility checks are done. The reason we moved that prior to the ballot opening for a vote this year was twofold. It was first, it meant that because of the shortlisting process, the number of candidates was actually lower, and it was manageable to do it with 6, then it maybe would not have been manageable to do with 10 or 12 or 15 candidates. The second reason was that the elections committee felt it was important that the final ballot open to the community was representative of candidates who the board would choose to actually seat. In past, I'm sure people remember like the movement charter vote. I think it was important that we did not have a situation like that after a vote. Obviously, removing a candidate is never ideal. We felt it is better that if that has to happen, if the board has to do that, it happens prior to the ballot rather than so voting, the election is conducted using single transferable vote. This is ranked choice voting. There's a list of the people eligible to vote up on screen. It's a pretty wide net. Community organizers is a very subjective one. Something the elections committee does is we get emails from people who say, hey, I don't have a lot of edits, right? I don't have 500 edits maybe, but I've organized these edit-a-thons, or I use Wikipedia in the classroom. And we'll evaluate those and oftentimes grant those people voting rights if they are involved in the movement in that way, or maybe not a traditional editor or a developer. Really quickly, single transferable vote can be a little complicated. It's a ranked choice. It's got these words meek and droop. So the meek implementation is how preferences are reallocated each round, and droop quota is the minimum number of votes needed to win election. The basic idea here is, let's say we do round one candidate has 50 plus 1% of the votes, right? They are elected, any surplus votes they have, so votes over that droop quota, are reallocated based on that voter's second, third, fourth, fifth choice votes, etc., to the other candidates in kind of diminishing fashion. So it's weighted a little more second choice than a person's fifth choices. If no candidates reach the quota, bottom candidate is eliminated and their votes reallocated the same way. it is a little complicated. I spent a while trying to find a diagram, an infographic that would explain this, and they were all like 4 pages long. So that's the basics. There's a page on Meta that does go over it. And this is like the standard, or roughly standard way of implementing ranked choice voting. I think that it was like been around since like the 60s. It's a old standard. After the vote, which runs for 2 weeks, stewards in the EC audit the results, verify them before making an announcement on Meta, and typically winners that found eligible by the board are appointed by the end of the year. That is the standard timeline. Okay, that's a crash course. I really wanted to get through that fast so we can talk about the October 2025 board elections. I know that this specific election is why people are here today. These were the 4 candidates who were placed on the final ballot. There's information about them on Meta, candidate statements. Voting's only open for, I think, 3 more days, I think the 22nd. I'm sure many people have voted already or have chosen not to vote. Last I checked, I think we were up to 5,200 voters casting ballots. So participation is roughly the same as previous years, maybe a little behind. Okay, with that, let's talk. So I want to open the floor to y'all. I would prefer it if we could keep questions focused on the elections process itself, the things that the elections committee maybe has the ability to control or implement. Because we're going to have some dead space after this election leading into the next election, where all the committee is doing is trying to refine this process, see how can we make it more responsive to the community. I hope that like a lot of the people I've had conversations with this weekend can attest that we are like really listening. We want to make changes that are representative of y'all if we can. I cannot, for example, go back to the elections committee meeting and say, let's make the WMF a member organization, or let's get rid of the board of directors, right? So I want to hear your thoughts on what we can do with the election process to maybe make things a bit more representative. For other suggestions, there's an open call on MetaWiki right now from the governance committee, which is composed of members of the board, asking about broader changes. You can find that on Meta, and they're calling for basically proposals. I encourage people to check that out as well. Yes?
Oh, sorry. You're calling on me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I appreciate all the rationale you provided. I think I understand at least that significant expense goes towards doing these background checks, and that the feeling was that given that there were only 6 people after shortlisting, it was financially possible. But I think it was just natural that from the board's perspective, it's easier to remove a candidate before the election than to do it after, because when a board is like thinking of removing a candidate after the community has already voted on it, there's some level of awareness that there'll be more backlash. So, if you're on the elections committee the next time around, what are your thoughts that doing the background checks after the fact sort of makes the board a little bit more hesitant to remove candidates after the fact, after the community has made its voice known?
Okay, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know that, I guess I don't know if the board's thinking is as simplistic as that. I definitely see where there might be an incentive. That's something I can bring up and say. I know there's been some internal discussion about whether or not that was the right decision. So it's something that we have talked about. So I can say that we are talking about that, thinking about that. But obviously, I think that to some extent the board will make the decision the board feels is best regardless. So from the EC perspective, it is, it's counterintuitive, right? Because it's maybe not representative, but it is somehow also more representative to have a ballot of candidates that would be seated. And I understand there's a contradiction there that's difficult to rationalize.
I understand, but it's a matter of whether or not the candidate is going to be removed is something in dispute that might be different whether or not it's before or after.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I can say that we have already started kind of thinking and talking about that. Yeah. Hannah?
So I appreciate you clarifying for people who aren't aware that the elections committee doesn't really have much actual authority. And also just you explaining how things work. And I mean, obviously I disagree that that is the way things should work. The whole thing about making the ballot quote unquote more manageable by only having 6 candidates, I disagree with that premise entirely. I disagree with, you know, the idea that you need affiliates to be the middleman to like narrow down candidates. And I also just in general feel that even though people say that they are listening to us, that their actions do not show that in any capacity. Like, I mean, I feel like the interaction I had with Mariana yesterday, where she said that I can only change things if I'm the CEO, like, I feel like that's just saying the quiet part out loud. Like, people don't actually care.
Do we have?
We can run your mic if you want.
There's one there.
What you got?
I mean, I already said what I said.
So do you want? I guess.
Could you repeat it?
Yeah. So the question or comment was the shortlisting process probably is not like the most effective way. Affiliates maybe shouldn't function as like middlemen in this regard, and then also that there's a feeling that like the people who do make the decisions, so board, CEO, etc., maybe are not listening. Is that the gist? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, and that it's actually impossible to change things. They're just saying that.
Yeah. So I can comment on the shortlisting thing. This is another thing that we have talked about. I've had conversations with people this weekend on maybe alternatives. I think the EC gets the sense that a lot of people feel like affiliates have a different set of incentives than like community members or editors do. Is that kind of the vibe we have?
Definitely.
Okay. And so that's something we can think about. I can say, again, as with most things, like the EC is a global committee. We have members across North America, Europe, Asia, across North America, Europe, Asia, the Middle East. And so sometimes the conversations we have are like over email, asynchronous things take time. Which can make it difficult when we're on a crunch to decide something like what a shortlisting process looks like. We have listened to what people have said about the shortlisting process, and I think that having that space between now and the next election will help us hopefully refine something that can be more representative in the back and then over here. Okay.
Yeah, so I've been around for 7-8 years. Every time that there's been an election, it's been a different process. And you know, I'm a high propensity voter in regular life. I'm a high propensity voter in my Wikimedia life, and it's very important to me to participate. You know, when we did have a slate that was, I don't remember how many we topped out at, it was like 15 candidates or something like that. I did find it very difficult to engage in the process. And I know that I think if my memory serves me, this affiliate vetting process actually comes out of the legacy of the fact that there used to be affiliate seats and then there used to be separate community seats. And then based on feedback, the process was revised to structure it this way. So I guess a question that I've just had recurring every time I participate in the process is like, I definitely get that in order to build trust around the process, there needs to be a level of predictability and consistency. But that is in tension with the fact that the committees and the board and other stakeholders involved like want to receive feedback and want to revise the process and want to improve the process, which leads to, you know, maybe things being less clear or less consistent than they could be. So I'm wondering from your perspective how you balance that tension and then knowing that like we just underwent a big change that has caused a big reaction. How do we, if we're gonna significantly change the process, again, I know we have 2 years that'll work in our favor, but how do we get to a place where we maximize, yes, we're taking feedback and yes, we're responding, but also we're building understanding and buy-in around the process and a sense that it's going to stabilize?
Yeah, thank you. So this is my first election as a member of the elections committee in like a full voting capacity. And I agree that it has been confusing, that the process has been different, and that goes back to the fact that the bylaws don't really specify, right? They just say there needs to be some kind of like community input for these seats or what that looks like. I think on our end, we're gonna be looking really heavily into how we can either solicit proposals from the community or bring a proposal to the community for refinement over those next 2 years before the next election. but we do really want it to be a participatory process and creating it, and with the goal of potentially this then being made a policy by the board where that is standard and that's in writing, which then obviously like protects y'all as voters way more, right? Because you have things change, we have something really clearly we can point to say, wait, that's like not quite right. Does that answer? So there's something else I should say? Okay. From there?
I agree with Hannah on what she said about like maybe affiliates aren't maybe the best to shortlist because that feels like it disadvantages people from the community that aren't part of an affiliate. Has the elections committee discussed alternatives that might be more equal for people from the community?
We have discussed, okay, I'll put it that we have talked about discussing like alternatives, but right now we're focused on this election with the timeline. But I can promise that that's something that is on the agenda in the coming months, is figuring out what that looks like. And potentially, again, like I said, if we can make that participatory and see what does the community want or think in a shortlisting process. I think that the vibe of the EC is still geared towards like a ballot with a, I guess like the right word might be reasonable number of candidates is better for informed voting. But we do want to make sure that the shortlisting process represents the needs of the community as much as possible. And like I said, I know like basically everybody I've talked to has been like, I don't know if affiliates like in their current form represent me. So that's something that I can promise we're talking and thinking about.
So why wouldn't it be better if we have the affiliates rank 1 through the end of how many are on the list, and then pass that off to the board so the board can determine, okay, start at 1, is that one okay? Yes. Number 2, is that one okay? Yes. Number 3, oh, throw that out. Go down to number 4 and keep working down the list till they've got the 6 instead of cutting it at 4, till they've got the full 6. And only then announce publicly anyone who's on the list. Because the way it was done right now was somewhat transparent, but it was transparent in a bad way that made 2 people look bad.
Yeah, okay, so thank you for that. I'm trying to remember the exact timeline, sorry. We had conversation when the shortlisting, when the pre-vetting was first discussed or brought up as something that might happen. Something that we did ask and kind of talk about is, well, are we going to bump candidates up? And the decision that we made was, because the shortlisting results have already been announced, we don't think we should do that. That then brings confusion about the results of the shortlisting and reduces campaign time for those people. But so it is a problem we've recognized, unfortunately, after the fact, because the EC was not aware that the board was going to switch that vetting process timeline until after we'd done the shortlisting. So that's maybe some insight there. We were talking about the vetting after the shortlisting was done.
Hi, so I've been told that the software does not currently allow you to have a blank ballot or a write-in, and I'm wondering what you think about those options in the future.
Yeah, we're aware, obviously, that it didn't do that. We've gotten like emails and gone back and forth with some people specifically about that. It's something that we're going to think about for the next implementation. I'm sure people recognize that like drag and drop implementation was due this year from the WMF staff, like the developers who mandate or manage secure poll. But the EC is open to the idea of, I think, blank votes or like a none of the above option. I'm not sure that we're open to the idea of write-in votes, but we haven't talked about write-ins yet. But I can say we're thinking we're going to talk about the idea of a blank or like a protest option.
Hello. So one of my issues with this current election is that there were policies and timelines that were changed mid-process, just days before the election was supposed to begin. So this board of candidate review process and the shortlisting process and the timeline for that was only changed a few days before the election was supposed to begin. So I would like to ask whether we can have the elections committee and the board commit to not changing the rules mid-election, and to have the rules firmly stay in place once we start the elections process. Because changing the policies mid-process is it just diminishes my trust in the entire process that a policy could be introduced. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, you mentioned background checks, media checks, and reference interviews, and I would love to have more understanding and more transparency around what is involved in the background checks, what is involved in the media checks, and what is involved in the reference interviews, so candidates, potential candidates, will know coming in what to expect from those things.
Okay, I'm going to answer the first part, and then I'm going to float the second part to Kathy, because the EC has no interaction with that vetting. To answer the first part, yes, and again, we've talked about, like, we know that was uncomfortable, and I think the hope of, like, actually creating a formal policy where it isn't just vague and kind of just, well, the elections committee has authority to do a community advisory process, will resolve that in the future. And I know I've said it a few times, that's where, if there is like a silver lining here, it's that we have that 2-year period where we can really sit down and try to craft that and get community feedback and approval and potentially adopted by, like, the board as a formal policy. So yes, we do recognize that that's something we want to avoid in the future. For the second part, can you bring my microphone over to Kathy? And this is going to be the answer to what that candidate vetting looks like.
We're running a bit low on time, so I think after this we'll have time for maybe another question.
So first, I want to, on behalf of the board, agree on the importance of not changing the process midstream, and agree that that destroys trust, doesn't build trust. In terms of the vetting, yep, the foundation, like other employers, have a third-party contractor who does the background check. So it's background, looking for any kind of criminal behavior, fraud, kinds of activities. Media check is done also by a third party, I think as well as, so I've not been involved in that. The board itself has not been involved in that. With regard to the reference checks, all candidates are asked to provide names and contact information for 2 references. The trustees do not go out on their own looking for references. And so that's an opportunity for the candidate to pick whomever, whether it's a community person or someone from employment. It's up to the candidate. And it's it's an opportunity to learn more about the candidate.
Are we around?
Yeah, and so all candidates are interviewed, not by the full committee. This was a small group of trustees, and those were in confidence, but everyone had the interview opportunity. Is that?
So we do have to wrap in here.
Sorry, we're at time.
I really do want to continue these as much as I can. I'm going to be around a little bit, or back to the hotel. There's my user page on English Wiki. You can email me. You can ask on the top page. You can email .com. We really do want to have these conversations. Thank you all.
This on the right.